Good morning, colleagues. I now reconvene the general session. As I mentioned yesterday, commission members who participate remotely will need to disclose if any other individuals 18 years of age or older are present in the room at the remote location and the general nature of the member's relationship with any such individuals. Are there any disclosures for members attending via Zoom? Commissioner Cotton?
No disclosures this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. As a reminder, commissioners who are participating via Zoom must be visible at all times on camera. Please log off Zoom if you need to leave the meeting and log in when you're ready to join the meeting. If you experience broadband or internet connectivity problems while participating in the meeting, that would be remedied by joining without video. You must announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off your camera. We will now take roll call. Recording Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Brown.
Here.
Catherine Williams-Brown.
Present.
Jose Cardenas.
Present.
Cheryl Cotton.
Present.
Juan Cruz.
Present.
Christopher Davis.
Present.
Michael De La Torre.
Present.
Anna Marie Francois. Makita Gwino-Shire.
Present.
Megan Gross.
Present.
Johanna Howick.
Present.
Susan Aradia. Bonnie Clark.
Present.
Ira Lit.
Present.
Monica Martinez.
Here.
Sharon Powry. David Simmons.
Here.
Fang Yulof.
Present.
Kimberly Weiss Smith.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's begin with the Professional Practices Committee. Commissioner Hartwig, will you please convene the committee?
Thank you. I now convene the Professional Practices Committee. The committee has one item today. Item 4A is the Division of Professional Practices Workload Report. Rachel Gritzofi will present this item. Ms. Gritzofi, will you please begin?
Talk loud, but updates on the Commission's Division of Professional Practices Workload are presented to the Commission to provide insight into the scope and level of current work and educator discipline. The report covers the period of December 2023 through February 2024. The Commission's dashboards report on 6 key measurements in line graph form, showing both current year numbers as well as prior year numbers for comparison purposes. The total cases are the number of open cases within DPP, including cases in the intake unit before the Committee of Credentials, pending before the Commission, and pending an administrative hearing. At the end of February, DPP's caseload was 3,347. Cases opened are new cases during the month from all sources, including criminal arrest notices, district reports, affidavits, and educators who self-report misconduct. In February, DPP opened 674 cases. The increase in total cases in the chart on the second page is evidenced by the number of cases DPP has opened in both January and February. The initial review and formal review charts reflect the number of cases reviewed by the committee at its normal 3-day meeting in February. This 2-step review process is required by statute. There were 90 initial review cases prepared in February. DPP expects this number to continue to fluctuate as cases move through the committee process. Cases closed is the number of matters closed by commission action, committee action, or closed by staff where the commission is given formal delegation of authority. For example, single offense alcohol cases that do not involve schools, minors, or publicity. In February, 461 cases were closed, which is within the normal range of 400 to 500. AG cases refers to cases in which an educator requests an administrative hearing to challenge the recommendation for discipline made by the committee. An administrative hearing is an evidentiary proceeding where the administrative law judge hears and rules on the evidence. The commission is represented in these hearings by the the Office of the Attorney General. The number of cases where the AG is representing the commission is shown in the last graph. The number of cases currently at the administrative hearing stage is 180. DPP is committed to work that is critical to public service and the commission's mission. DPP continues to maintain a steady case production while at the same time ensuring quality case preparation for the committee. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzoff. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to provide a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Dr. Edgar Lampkin, would you like to make a public comment on this item? And if so, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Thank you. I was having difficulties trying to get in and understand what the topic was. Is this regarding the complaint regarding program approval for an institution of higher education?
No, we're not on that item at this
Okay,
time.
that's where I want to make a comment. Thank you.
Are there any other
We
public
have no
comments?
additional requests for public comment.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? I don't see any at the table, and I don't think I see any on Zoom. So I'll take my prerogative. I really appreciate this report every meeting. As you said in your intro, this is our way to have insight into the scope and level of current work in educator discipline. And as we know, educator discipline is one of our 3 pillars of work we have here, along with accreditation and credentialing. And I really appreciate that this is our one opportunity for the public to have insight into this very important pillar of the work that we do. So thank you both for the work and for the work that goes into putting this report together every other month. We can notice the significant increase in total cases, about 400 more cases at this point than last year. And so I've appreciated at each meeting you've talked to us about the workflow and whether you have any concerns about the increase in cases. Do you have any concerns about staffing and handling this many more cases on the workflow timeline that we expect?
Thank you. No, not at this time. As usual, we are monitoring the total number of cases and the workflow moving through the system. Last meeting, you asked me a question about the closed cases, and in December, we hadn't closed as many as the previous year. And so I went back and looked at some of the records, and what I found was that staffing for December of this year was quite low. We had quite a few absences due to illness. We also had 2 individuals out on leave that came back in January and February. And so the January and February folks that came back, they have boosted the morale and the workload in the division. Their return has instilled a positive return to normalcy in our unit. And so our unit is fully staffed and everybody feels very happy about that. So the numbers are showing that my team is moving. The total cases are rising due to the sheer number of applications due to the busy season. Normally our busy season starts in earlier for DPP in January, February. So we anticipated a rise. The certification busy season lasted a little bit longer, which is causing our busy season to stay a few months longer. So I expect our numbers to peak a little bit more, and then at the end of the fiscal year, kind of normal out to better averages. So I'm not concerned with the numbers. Yes, they've climbed and it's a little bit spooky, but at this time, the workload is moving and all the cases that are in the queue are moving in the appropriate fashion. So I'm not concerned about the total at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate both the follow-up from my question at the last meeting and the granular explanation of why that was. I do have one specific question related to the AG cases. Our AG cases are also up. Last year at this time, we had 140, and this year we have 180. when that is that or out of the norm? And when that happens, do you see any issues with the timeline of how the cases are dealt with by the AG's office, or are there required timelines for those cases such that we don't have a concern about the increase in the number at the AG's office?
I would love to get you an answer on that. It isn't something that I have with me right now. The AG cases are normally handled in our legal division, but it is some information I can get for you next meeting.
That would be great. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Ms. Gritzofi before we close this item? Okay, thanks again, and please convey our thanks both to the division and to the Committee of Credentials, which keeps all of this moving as well. This is an information item and no action is needed. Thank you, Ms. Gritzofi.
Thank you.
This concludes the business before the Professional Practices Committee. The committee is adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartwig. I now recess the general session and move to the Educator Preparation Committee. Commissioner Cardenas, will you please reconvene the committee?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I would like to reconvene the Educator Preparation Committee. We have 3 items today. Our first Educator Preparation Committee item for today is item 3C, the complaint regarding program approval for an institution of higher education to offer the multiple subject program. This item is being presented by Cheryl Hickey, Aaron Sullivan, and David DeGear. This is an action item. Ms. Hickey, will you please begin?
Good morning, Commissioners. Morning. Agenda item 3C presents for the Commission's consideration and action a complaint submitted regarding the Committee on Accreditation's approval in January of 2024 of Mills College at Northeastern University's preliminary multiple subject program. The agenda item contains an outline of the program approval process as well as education code language related to the responsibilities and duties of both the Commission and the Committee on Accreditation. It includes the letter of complaint submitted jointly to the COA by Decoding Dyslexia of California, California Reading Coalition, and Families in Schools. Additionally, it contains a response from the Vice Provost of Curriculum and Programs at Mills College at Northeastern University. And lastly, the item contains the 3 possible courses of action that are outlined in the accreditation framework adopted by you all for handling complaints. They are listed on page 2 of the agenda item and include 1, investigate the basis for the concern, 2, provide technical assistance, or 3, refer the concerns to the Committee on Accreditation for consideration and possible action. And we wanted to go through quickly the IPR process, so my colleague Aaron Sullivan will go through that.
Thank you, Cheryl. Good morning, everyone. All right, so what is the IPR process? IPR stands for Initial Program Review, and it is the process that commission-approved institutions must go through whenever they determine that they wish to offer a new type of educator preparation program. So I'll describe this process briefly. So first, once an institution has decided what program it would like to offer, we ask that they submit to us what we call our intent to submit form. So it notifies us in advance that they are planning to write a proposal. This allows us to begin planning for the workload and start a search for qualified reviewers with expertise in the area of the program the institution plans to submit. To the extent possible, we do look for for reviewers with expertise in that area of credential. Sometimes this is a challenge, especially in our low incidence areas like school nurse or deaf and hard of hearing. So we sometimes it can take a little bit of time to do that recruiting. And thank you to anybody in the room who's ever been contacted to ask if you have recommendations, because we do sometimes lean on you all to help us find some folks to do this work. Once the institution does submit its proposal via its accreditation website, because of course we do everything web-based now, commission staff then assigns a review team of not less than 2 individuals with expertise in that area. And then staff works with the team to identify some potential dates to bring them together. Reviewer expertise, their availability, any conflicts of interest with the institution to be reviewed. All of these things are considered when we assign these individuals to a review team. So review teams are brought together virtually. via Zoom, and staff spends time initially at the beginning of the day on training and calibration for new standards, right? So right now that's literacy and PK3 especially. Staff does walk through a really nice overview of how the standards and the TPEs are organized and what kinds of documentation we have required from the institution to let the reviewers know what they can expect to see and how that does and does not, and sometimes align directly, standard by standard. Reviewers are then sort of released into either a breakout room to work, especially with literacy and PK3. Staff stays on hand all day long to answer questions from the reviewers. And they work together to determine whether or not the evidence that has been submitted by the institution demonstrates alignment to the standard, or whether additional information or clarification is needed. And if additional information and clarification is needed, detailed questions, instructions are provided on a feedback form that then goes back to the institution so they can respond. And we track those responses because it is an iterative process. For brand new programs, an institution has to continue to answer questions by either staff or reviewers until it is determined that they have demonstrated alignment to the standard. So we track their feedback in an ongoing way. Once the review team has come to a consensus decision that all the standards are found to be aligned, they inform staff, and then staff takes a proposal to the Committee on Accreditation for consideration for approval of that program. The Committee on Accreditation is provided a summary paragraph about the program and the submission that also, though, includes links to the proposal so that they can dig in as much or as little as they care to as well to verify the review that's been done and the evidence that's been submitted. The institution is invited to the meeting where the COA will be considering their proposal, so that if the COA has any questions about the program, they can ask the institution directly. And of course, our IPR staff is always on hand during those agenda items as well, so that they can answer any questions maybe about process or the reviewers, et cetera. So hopefully that's a little helpful for you, and I'll turn it back over to Cheryl.
Yeah, so I just want to note where this institution in particular is in the accreditation system, if it's helpful for your decision today. For your recollection and for any new commissioners, Mills College was in operation as a California institution for over 172 years, having been established in 1852. In 2022, it closed its doors. And Mills College, Northeastern University assumed control of the new institution, Mills College at Northeastern University. Because Mills College ceased to exist, and this new entity, Mills College at Northeastern University, is an institution of higher education that had not previously been approved as a commission-approved program sponsor to offer educator preparation in the state. The commission required Northeastern University to go through the 5-stage initial institutional approval process. The commission granted provisional approval, which is stage 3 of the process, to Northeastern in June of 2023 for a period of 3 years. The commission's process for initial institutional approval after stage 3 is followed by stage 4, where the Committee on Accreditation considers the approval of the specific program, the process that Erin just described. If the COA approved it, the institution then may begin offering the program for a provisional period of time, so that 3-year period of time that you approved. So one more thing I want to mention is that's sort of hanging there is literacy certification. So you all remember that SB 488 requires the commission to go through and certify every single multiple subject ed specialist and PK3 program for literacy certification to assure that they will be in alignment with the new standards. Our message to all new programs approved after October 2023, which was the first time a new program was approved using the new literacy standards, has been a little bit different than for everybody else because they are not yet operational. They haven't started their program yet. So we told them basically they will have to go through certification, but we will get back to them in the fall because we need to find out how many are actually operating. So we find out that sometimes we approve a program and there's a big delay in when they actually start the program for a variety of reasons. So we are going to contact all new programs sometime in the fall next year. At the conclusion of the provisional period, when the data is available about completers, a full site visit with the review team is conducted. The site visit findings is presented to the COA, and if it recommends accreditation, then it comes back to you, the full commission, for consideration and granting full initial institutional approval. Basically, that's removing the provisional status that Mills College has at the moment. The commission staff is here to answer any questions you may have about the initial program review process or the initial institutional approval process. As you know, staff is primarily responsible for shepherding the process, so we can't answer questions about what the reviewers were thinking or were not thinking and what they saw. With that, I'd like to acknowledge that there are I think 9 letters on the website for you to review, and we are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Just a reminder, there is a timer. There's a 2-minute limit. If you could please adhere to that. Thank you. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Yes, Mayuki Manzanato, please approach the microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, commissioners. Good morning. My name is Miki Montaneda, and I'm here representing the California Teachers Association. CTA supports the commission's overall accreditation process and the robust steps that are involved. CTA is concerned, however, with the complaints exclusionary process to academic approaches and texts. When it comes to TK-12 teachers, we believe that restricting instructional methods stifles teachers' creativity and innovation in the classroom. Educators should have the flexibility to adapt their teaching strategies based on the students' needs, interests, and the content being taught. Now, allowing for a range of instructional approaches fosters creativity and encourages teachers to try new methods to enhance the learning of their students on a day-to-day basis. Teachers should have the autonomy to select instructional methods that best support the attainment of learning goals while considering the needs of their students in the process. As trusted professionals, educators are best equipped to make school and classroom decisions to ensure student success. Limiting instructional approaches undermines teachers' professional autonomy and may impede effectiveness in the classroom. When we identify helpful literacy research and best practices, the state of California should encourage this approach rather than resort to punishment, pulling accreditation, or even tying the hands of teachers from thinking outside of the box. Lastly, CTA believes that our teacher preparation programs must be held to California's credentialing and accreditation process. If there's any ways to improve our process, we should discuss that collectively as opposed to the method of this complaint. Thank you.
Doug Gephardt.
An accreditation process for Northeastern. I believe that it is appropriate then for the Committee on Accreditation to review this issue, make their findings, and bring that report back to the commission. Thank you.
Nancy Walker, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
My name is Dr. Nancy Walker, and I'm a professor of literacy education at the University of Laverne. I would like to speak to what constitutes full and robust reading instruction. While my background is a K-12 literacy educator, I have been trained in Orton Gillingham in additional dyslexia instruction. While this training placed extensive emphasis on structured literacy, specifically decoding, little attention was given to the broader definition of what it means to be a proficient reader equipped to navigate the world. A comprehensive literacy curriculum includes background knowledge, vocabulary, writing, academic language, multilingualism, motivation, culturally sustaining pedagogies, diverse text, and assessments. By limiting our focus to the claims made by the popular press and media, we have underrepresented other pieces of reading pedagogy. The Mills College program represents the broad range of literacy as represented in the California Literacy Frameworks and Standards. It is for this reason that I call on you, the commissioners, to please uphold the decision made by the reviewers of Mills College, Northeastern University's initial program review. Thank you.
Anita Flemington, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Thank you. My name is Anita Flemington, and I am a professor of education at the University of Laverne. I am speaking today on behalf of the 1.1 million designated English learners in the state of California. As educators of our multilingual students, we know that early phonics instruction is important, but we also understand that comprehensible reading instruction is essential. If students do not understand the words that they are decoding, reading is not occurring. A strong reading program must place heavy emphasis on reading comprehension and include an array of strategies to achieve this goal. Quality reading instruction must also consider the sociocultural aspects of literacy development. Understanding students' backgrounds and languages is essential for quality literacy instruction. As both a reviewer for the CTC and someone who has had programs go through the initial program review process, I have always found that the CTC's review process is comprehensive and thorough and examines all aspects of literacy programs. Thank you very much.
Mimi Miller, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Hello, my name is Dr. Mimi Miller. I'm a professor and literacy teacher educator at CSU Chico. My recommendation is that the commission continue to stand behind the initial program approval of Mills College. The complaint against Mills privileges one line of research over another. It has inaccurately cited research in order to confirm a set of beliefs about reading instruction. As we all know, reading instruction is complex. The science of reading is not settled and will never be settled. To best serve our students, first, we must all commit to reviewing and conducting research faithfully and without bias. Second, we must commit to using valid and research-based instructional strategies. Using multiple evidence-based approaches is the only way to serve the needs of every learner. I urge the commission to resist any action that would make reading instruction more restrictive than what is recommended by the full body of research. Thank you.
Cynthia Grutzik, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, Chair Greenough-Shire, Vice Chair Klatt, and members of the commission. My name is Cynthia Grutzik, and I'm the Dean of the Graduate College of Education at San Francisco State University. I am a co-chair of the Policy Committee of the California Council on Teacher Education, and I'm a co-chair and I'm also a member of the CCTC's Board of Institutional Reviewers. This complaint makes incorrect claims and is based on NCTQ's misrepresentation of the research, as Mills College Northeastern's response so clearly outlines. Even more, as the CCTE letter states, it demonstrates a disregard for California's credentialing and accreditation system and is an intrusion into a professional process that is established by legislation. The CTC, in collaboration and consultation with teacher educators and content experts, implements a rigorous accreditation process in which every institution is engaged. It is not up to external entities to review California's credential programs, nor to make judgments about their alignment with California's standards and education code. This is squarely in the purview of the CTC. I strongly encourage the Commission to neither investigate the basis for concern nor to refer the concerns to the COA for consideration and possible action. That leaves the middle option, technical assistance, which is already built into the accreditation process, and in this case, in the upcoming full site visit and literacy certification process. Thank you.
Will please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
I'm Lori DePole, Co-State Director of Decoding Dyslexia California. The CTC should be commended on the excellent job that it has been done in adopting strong new literacy teaching standards under SB 488. Our new standards have received national recognition as a significant step in aligning how we better prepare new teachers in teaching literacy with what we know from decades of research. The SB 488 legislation was passed as the legislature and the governor acknowledged that California accredited teacher prep programs overall are not doing an adequate job in preparing and supporting our new teachers in evidence-based literacy instruction. We are at a critical juncture as the best literacy teaching standards will not make a difference if the Commission does not hold our teacher prep programs accountable for complying with them. This concept that it is acceptable for the Commission to allow programs to follow a kitchen sink approach where both evidence and non-evidence-based reading instructional practices are taught to credential candidates will only result in very confused teachers. To quote Dr. Moats, reading is rocket science, and we ask that the Commission seek technical assistance from expert reading researchers in investigating whether the proposed practices outlined in our complaint meet the threshold of evidence-based as required by our standards and California laws. The CTC is required under law to ensure that programs satisfy these new literacy teaching standards. Allowing teacher prep programs to continue operating under the past status quo and teaching reading instructional practices that are not supported by research or our ELA-ELD framework or our new literacy standards does a disservice to the credential candidates paying tuition, and more importantly, will only serve to exacerbate California's literacy crisis by allowing inadequately prepared teachers to enter our classrooms. Thank you.
Karen Escalante, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, commissioners and guests. My name is Karen Escalante. I'm an assistant professor of teacher education and foundations at California State University, San Bernardino. I speak to you today as president of the California Council on Teacher Education, representing approximately 75 teacher preparation programs throughout California. The teaching profession is guided by deep professionalism. Within California, we are guided by standards for the teaching profession, teaching performance expectations within our teacher preparation programs, and content standards within our TK through 12 classrooms. All of these standards are embedded and upheld within our accreditation processes and bodies. NCTQ is not an accrediting or academic body. It is critical to understand their efforts to pick and choose select elements of teacher preparation syllabi, undermine the teaching profession, and aim to deprofessionalize a professional workforce. Collectively, we must stand up to their attacks on our profession, our accreditation process, and the Board of Institutional Reviewers. Taking an unwavering stance for teaching and teacher preparation professionalism, I ask you, the commissioners, to uphold the decision made by the reviewers of Mills College Northeastern University's initial program review. Thank you.
Juliet Wallleitner, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Dr. Juliet Wallleitner. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes, we
hear you.
can.
Sorry, I didn't see the timer counting down. Okay, starting again. Good morning. My name is Dr. Juliet Wallleitner. I'm an associate professor of literacy education and the director of educator preparation programs and accreditation at Fresno State. I'm also the director of the San Joaquin Valley Writing Project, an associate executive director of the California Writing Project, and a board member of the California Council of Teacher Education. I want to begin by highlighting the shared commitment California teacher education programs have with the Commission to preparing highly qualified teachers to serve California's PK-12 learners. It is for this reason that, as educator preparation programs, we appreciate the rigorous accreditation processes that the Commission has created. Initial program reviews and subsequent accreditation site visit reviews serve as a checks and balances to make sure programs are meeting the highest standards. We appreciate that the Commission draws on California's rich intellectual resources when creating new standards. When the new literacy standards were developed in response to AB 488, a team of 29 experts from across PK-12 institutions, higher education, and educational organizations came together. I was a member of that group and participated in the rigorous dialogues as we grappled with what to include. The public then had the opportunity to provide input before the standards were adopted. Again, checks and balances. Indeed, these processes lead California's system of accreditation to be regarded as one of the country's most rigorous. It is for this reason that I call on you, the commissioners, to please uphold the decision made by the reviewers of Mills College Northeastern University's initial program review. Thank you.
Bettina, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Bettina Shea, and I am the Boeing Endowed Professor of Teacher Education at the University of Washington, former Department Chair of Teacher Education at California State University, Long Beach, and the immediate past president of the California Council on Teacher Education. I offer my comments today as a language and literacy teacher and researcher with over 20 years of experience in the field, and as a mother of 4 children who are or have been in California public schools, including 2 multilingual learners and 2 children who struggled with reading after missing several years of schooling before being placed in foster care and eventually re-entering the schooling system. When we define reading and consider literacy development, we must go beyond decoding. To be fully literate, students need the ability to access their full meaning-making capacities. For example, recently I was reading with my daughter who is in a Korean immersion program. Unlike English, Korean is a fully decodable language. My daughter, having mastered the Hangul alphabet, read fluently to me. But when I asked her what she read, she said, "I don't know. I know some words and I can guess from the pictures, but I'm not sure what it says, what it means." Because she can decode every word in the book, is she fully literate? No, she's on the right track, but needs further guidance from her teacher through additional research-based activities like guided reading that can build her comprehension, and those included in the Mills College Northeastern University curriculum under Challenge. Further, she used context clues to draw from her oral language to make connections and develop her vocabulary. These skills are key to her full literacy development and should be part of a robust teacher education curriculum on reading. As my CTA colleague stated, it is important that teacher educators and teachers as professionals are given the chance to develop and are entrusted to use a full repertoire of reading strategies. One size did not fit all in supporting the growing literacy needs of our children in the 21st century. Thank you.
Heather Pesky, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Heather Pesky, and I'm the president of the National Council on Teacher Quality, known as NCTQ. I urge the commission to reconsider the Committee on Accreditation's decision to grant approval of the multiple subject teacher preparation program at Mills College at Northeastern University. At NCTQ, we have a long history of reviewing teacher preparation programs to ensure the instruction they provide is aligned to research. In June, we published a national analysis of over 700 programs that looked at whether they provide teacher candidates with a foundation in scientifically based reading instruction. This analysis was informed by an extensive review of the research and consultation with a panel of literacy experts from across the country. As described in the written comments I provided to the Commission, My team of analysts reviewed the syllabi provided by Mills College. Based on those documents, had Mills College been part of the sample of programs we reviewed for our report, it would have earned a grade of F for failing to provide adequate coverage of the 5 core components of reading instruction. Equally concerning, the Mills College program appears to be grounded in balanced literacy, a model of reading instruction that research and our panel of literacy experts recommended we included on our list of practices that are contrary to the research. Additionally, our analysts found the Mills College syllabi lacking in details that are key about the coursework and the distribution of asynchronous and synchronous course content. Given the stakes of program approval in California, we found it surprising the committee determined it had enough information to grant program approval without these kinds of details. I urge the commission to reverse its decision about Mills College. At the very least, the commission should seek answers to the basic questions I raised in my written comments and here today about the structure and content of the courses. I urge you to call on the program to make further revisions to fully align to the state's rigorous teacher standards and to abandon its plans to anchor its program in balanced literacy. California students need reading teachers who are steeped in the best science, and it is the commission's responsibility to attain this goal. Thank you for your time.
Todd Collins, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Todd Collins, and I'm speaking for the California Reading Coalition. I've also been a member of the Board of Education and Palo Alto Unified for the last 7 years, though for clarity, I'm not speaking on behalf of the district today. I urge the Commission to take appropriate and immediate action to investigate the complaint filed on the Mills Northeastern Teacher Preparation Programs. There are fundamental issues at stake here. 2022's SB 488 put into law specific key requirements for preparing new teachers to teach reading, aligned with the best current evidence. Our young students deserve this evidence-based instruction, and our new teachers deserve to be properly prepared. As multiple state and national reading experts have written to the Commission, the Mills Northeastern program falls well short on meeting those requirements. Please listen to their critique. On a practical level, in my own district, when we implemented district-wide initiatives to improve early literacy results, one of the first actions we had to take was to have every K-5 teacher complete extensive training in structured literacy. This was critical to our success. We saw grade level performance for low-income Latino third graders rise from 20% to 47% over 3 years at a time when statewide results were sharply declining. The training mattered. That's exactly the kind of training that it appears the Mills Northeastern program is missing. That's exactly the kind of training that SB 488 was intended to guarantee for all teachers. With 75% of California's low-income Black and Latino students below grade level in third grade ELA, 75%, we cannot ignore this issue. Our teachers and students deserve better. Commissioners, it's up to you to make sure the letter and the intent of the law is followed. If you don't do it, it won't be done, and these terrible results will not change. Please use your authority to enforce California's standards for teacher preparation, the crucial foundation for improving reading achievement for California's 6 million students. Thank you.
And Potente, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Hello, my name is Megan Potente, and I'm a former elementary educator with 20 years experience teaching first grade, fourth grade, special education. I was a literacy specialist and held other positions. I urge the commission to take action to investigate the complaint filed on Mills Northeastern multiple subject preliminary credential program. I was not taught what I needed to learn in my teacher prep. I was taught the theory of literacy instruction represented in the curriculum documents put forth in the accreditation application under review today. Running records, guided reading, and cueing failed me as a teacher, failed my students who deserved instruction grounded in science. Because I knew my preparation was lacking, I went back to school and paid out of pocket for the training I needed after already completing a master's degree. I did access this training at the UC Berkeley Extension's educational therapy program, and this drastically improved my success teaching children to read. My story is not at all unique. Thousands of teachers are currently seeking knowledge counter to the balanced literacy methods they learned in their teacher prep. SB 488 put into law specific key requirements for preparing new teachers to teach reading aligned with the best current evidence. Our young students deserve this evidence-informed instruction. Our new teachers deserve to be properly prepared. Please use your authority to enforce California's standards for teacher preparation. Literacy is the foundation, and Californians' 6 million kids deserve the best. Thank you.
Sue, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Sue Sears. I'm a professor of special education at California State University, Northridge, and I was on the work group that contributed to the development of Standard 7. Along with Marianne Wolf, who wrote our written comment, we want to thank the Commission for prioritizing reading instruction in California teacher preparation and setting new literacy standards for program accreditation. Now it is the work of people like me, a teacher educator, to align my program and other programs to the standards and to ensure that teacher candidates are able to meet the teaching performance expectations. In the case of Mills College, we have 3 concerns. The first concern is insufficient coverage of foundational skills and TPE 7.5, and I'm going to be very specific here in my comments. While there's mention of foundational skills in the syllabi, readings and resources to support candidates' understanding of these is very limited, and similarly for explicit and systematic instruction. Our second concern is coverage of reading assessment practices. The syllabi really pay very little attention to reading assessment, limiting it to a reference to running records and the use of a spelling inventory. There appears to be no instruction related to formative assessment, ongoing progress monitoring, or the use of other assessment techniques or measures. And in addition, screening is not mentioned. And finally, there is also the omission of reference to multi-tiered systems of support, which are integral to meeting the needs of all California students. We think the syllabi deserve further examination, as does the program. Thank you.
Manuel, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Manuel Buenrostro, Director of Policy at Californians Together, an organization that for 25 years has been advocating for English learners and expanding multilingual education in California. I am calling to align with some of the previous concerns raised today about the complaint and to call on the Commission to not make any decisions that would restrict reading instruction in California. We are very concerned about the ramifications of the complaint against the approval of Mills College, Northeastern University's multiple subject credential. We also agree with several of the points that were made by the California Council on Teacher Education and CABE in their letters. We support a research-based effective approach to literacy that is aligned to the California English Language Arts, English Language Development Framework, which is a one-of-a-kind framework that is research-based and was developed along multiple experts across California. We believe that the ELA-ELD framework will enable teacher candidates to provide quality literacy instruction for all students. Again, we believe that the framework is research-based. It does include all of the science of reading, and it also includes a comprehensive approach to literacy that includes the foundational skills and all of the critical language domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Again, we call on the Commission to uphold the decision made by the accreditation process and to continue to support a comprehensive approach to literacy. Thank you.
Yoli Flores, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Yoli Flores, and I'm CEO of Families in Schools. Our mission is to involve families in the education of their children. We center the voices of families who have been historically marginalized by the education system. Families in Schools joined in filing the Mills Northeastern complaint because their application subverts the requirements of SB 488. We spell out the details in our complaint, pointing specifically to Standard 7. Families in Schools also filed this complaint because our families who deserve to have teachers that are properly prepared to teach their children to read are deeply concerned, but are unable to voice their concerns themselves. You see, 99% of parents know that reading is the gateway to learning. They told us as much in a recent survey of over 655 LA Unified parents, as noted in our report, The Early Literacy Crisis in Los Angeles and Beyond. They also know something is terribly wrong when 75% of Black and Latino third graders in California are unable to read at grade level. And so if they could, these families would be speaking to you today. But our families have little to no familiarity with how to register their concerns. Many don't speak the language, are often afraid, or simply do not understand the process. In fact, most families simply trust. They trust that people in power, like you, will uphold the law to ensure that their children will have educators equipped to teach their children to read and to help them succeed in school. They trust the system. And so because you are the system, I am here today to ask you to investigate our complaint and ensure the law is followed so that every new teacher can effectively teach every student to read. Thank you, commissioners.
Kathy Futterman, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Hello, my name is Kathy Futterman, and I'm here today representing the Reading League California as the Director of Higher Education. I'm also adjunct faculty at Cal State East Bay in our Education Specialist Credentialing Program. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment today. I also want to mention I was appointed to the Comprehensive State Literacy Plan and worked on developing the California Dyslexia Guidelines. The Reading League's mission is to advance the awareness, understanding, and use of evidence-aligned reading instruction. And part of our vision is to promote and support the use of reading science-aligned coursework for statewide teacher preparation programs and professional learning opportunities for current educators. On behalf of the Reading League California, we are asking with respect in regards to the Committee on Accreditation unanimously granting initial program approval to Mills College Northeastern University's preliminary multiple subject program. The intent of the CTC's program Standard 7, effective literacy instruction for all students, is to cohesively and comprehensively address evidence-based literacy instruction as informed by California's ELA-ELD framework, California's Comprehensive Literacy Plan, and the California Dyslexia Guidelines. In those standards, the MTSS needs to be addressed, as well as instruction promoting the principles of equity, inclusion, and diversity. Unfortunately, in the 3 syllabi submitted by MCNU, there is a strong emphasis on understanding a balanced literacy approach to instruction, which has been found to not be effective in promoting effective literacy instruction for all learners. Also, the syllabi states that understanding dyslexia's significance in balanced literacy instruction, the California guidelines on dyslexia, and along with the California Ed Code, specifically state the need to teach students with reading difficulties using evidence-based, direct, explicit, systematic, and sequential approach. We sincerely hope the Committee on Accreditation and commissioners of the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing take into consideration the rigorous requirements institutions of higher ed must meet in order to adequately comply with Program 7. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Marianne Wolf, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Hello to everyone, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak to all of you.
I am the director at UCLA of the Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Learners, and Social Justice. And I come to you as a humble neuroscientist whose area is to take all the research we know. And of course, there is the unsettled, but there is far more of the settled neuroscience of reading. And in that capacity, I was asked to participate in the development of teacher performance expectations that Sue Sears and Roxanne Perdue and Nancy Brios and all of us, so many people, were working to make a platform for teachers to understand an expanded conceptualization of foundational skills in Standard 7 that goes well beyond phonics and phoneme awareness, but connects to oral language and to comprehension. That standard seems to be misunderstood at Mills College at Northeastern University. It is unfortunate, but from my opinion, after 30 years of intervention work, this fails to meet the standards that you asked us to bring to every teacher so that every teacher could be prepared to teach every child. And the reason why I decided to make this comment is because what I am seeing and worrisomely seeing in California is that there is becoming more loyalty to past methods that have been shown to be ineffective for our most struggling readers. We can never put loyalty to past methods over loyalty to our children. So I ask you very firmly to investigate what is going on at Mills College in its lack of adherence to Standard 7. Thank you so much.
We have no additional requests for public comment.
Just going to give it a second. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Chair Gendershire.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking staff. I especially appreciate the detailed description of the initial program review process. It's a good reminder to all of us. I want to thank colleagues who wrote letters to the commission and those who provided public comments. I greatly appreciate the public engagement in this matter. To frame our deliberations, I want to remind commissioners of our accreditation framework. The accreditation framework describes in detail the process by which the commission and its appointed committee on accreditation engage in program review and accreditation. This process requires that evidence of program alignment with the commission standards be reviewed by peers to determine each program's quality and effectiveness in order to retain their accreditation status. Thus, this is a peer review process that includes both review of authentic documentation as well as a site visit, either in person or technology assisted. The accreditation system's reliance on educators to serve as peer reviewers is integral to our system. Without their professional contributions, the accreditation system would not be operable. You may be wondering why I'm reading you sections from our accreditation framework. It is to remind all of us that we have an established, coherent, and effective process for program review and accreditation in the state of California. Per statute, CTC adopts accreditation policy and a framework and appoints members of the Committee on Accreditation, 6 from K-12, 6 from higher ed. The COA adopts a handbook to implement the framework and operates accreditation supported by the staff of the commission. And the COA is authorized in statute to make accreditation decisions. And finally, as our colleagues at the California Council of Teacher Education remind us, Education Code provides for the Commission to determine a set of professional standards for each of California's educational preparation programs. As we know, complaint has been made by the public and we must respond as a Commission. Section 5 of the accreditation framework guides the handling of complaints by individuals. The framework provides for 3 possible courses of action that the commission may take with respect to this complaint. They are investigate the basis for the concern, provide technical assistance, refer the concerns to the Committee on Accreditation for consideration, and possible action. I'd like to make a motion to remand this matter back to the COA. I make this motion as I find the evidence of procedural violations that might warrant an I find no evidence, of procedural violations that might warrant an investigation, nor a need for technical assistance by this body. Is there a second to get us going? Yes, Commissioner Brown. Thank you.
So this is an action item, and we do have a motion by Chair Grunenshire just to rephrase your motion, to remand this back to the COA. And then I have a second from Jeanette Brown? Okay. Are there any further discussions? Commissioner Litt?
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank the chair for her thoughtful overview and a reasonable recommendation. I'll add my support to this motion and offer a few additional thoughts. First, appreciation to the commission staff for a helpful overview on the relevant processes and considerations here, and also some reminders of our role in this process. Also, I'll add my appreciation for the public engagement on this and other important matters in the work of the commission. We are certainly at our best when we can benefit from the participation of an engaged and active public. So thank you so much for folks who both raised issues and concerns and offered thoughtful input and feedback at today's meeting. I do think it's important to elevate a few key points around this particular topic. First, I want to offer, well, say my personal view, but I think we share an affirmation of a commitment to SB 488 as a commission, and I think it's important to elevate that, as well as other ways that the commission has been engaged in efforts to strengthen literacy outcomes for our state's youth, with special considerations for students with learning differences and learning disabilities. I also want to affirm my confidence in the ways that the commission and other commission efforts in line with SB 488. Finally, in a way that aligns with your comments, Madam Chair, I think our Committee on Accreditation relies on commission-approved frameworks, guidelines, and standards of review, as well as the engagement of content area experts in making their well-considered decisions. And I have confidence in their work and their professionalism. And while I personally see no indication that attention to those frameworks, guidelines, and standards of review were amiss in this particular case, of the options available to us, I think it's reasonable to return the matter to the COA for their thoughtful consideration, which aligns with your motion.
Commissioner Heredia?
Thank you. Commissioner Litz, everything you just said, thank you. It just sort of cuts my list down. So thanks. I appreciate. I too just want to express my support of the motion. One of the speakers said, we'll never be, the literacy world will never really be, determined. We'll never really, in terms of which way we should go. But I think what's happened in terms of whether we do a really strong phonics or whether we go back to, do I have the courage to say, just for some people, whole language, finding that balance. But one of the things I am proud of is I am proud of the way that we have worked really hard to find, to base a balanced approach to learning based on the research. And I think that's so credible over the years. I started my career as a second grade teacher. I know a little bit about literacy. I also, was a professor in the area of education, and I, again, taught literacy courses. And so I, again, knows a little bit more. With my own two children, I experimented a lot with them at home on literacy approaches, different ways in terms of, how I'd read to one, read to the other, what kind of questions I'd ask, and what language I would use, English or Spanish. So I do have a little bit background, although I don't consider myself to be, have the scholarly approach that some of our experts have. But that is my background. One of the things, let me put my glasses on, sorry. If I put my glasses on, I can read the rest of my notes. I also have great confidence in the approaches that we have in terms of granting accreditation. As a professor, I know what it's like, especially in higher ed, not only at the elementary level, but also at the higher ed level. The rigorous process that we go through in terms of accreditation, of preparing our courses, of preparing them for review for CTC. So I have confidence that what we have done throughout the years in terms of accreditation, although things could be changed sometimes, we can always improve. But I do know, that we spend a lot of time looking and reviewing and assessing and reviewing again what we are offering our candidates at the teacher education level. Syllabi are reviewed. They may not always have, the exact wording of everything that's going to occur in a course, but that syllabi does contain the elements of all the standards, because those syllabi are reviewed by the department chairs and they're reviewed by colleagues. So there's a lot of just kinds of behind the scenes things that are done to provide literacy. I too am concerned that there's a great disproportionate amount of Latino and African American students who don't meet the standards, especially around the third grade. I mean, that is a great concern to me. But I also remember the rudimentary approaches to teaching literacy did not always help their efforts to become successful readers. It's when the sociocultural context of reading was considered in the process to reading that we began to see a real change in how students would advance in reading. So I think we've come a long ways in learning, what constitutes a balanced approach to reading. I think we have a very, solid approach to ensuring that what we do as a commission here, when we grant the accreditation to institutions, which I take seriously, because it's like, if you don't want to make a mistake, right? And so of all the hours and with the preparation of staff behind us, I feel very confident in what we have done so far and what the committee has done. So thank you.
I think I see Commissioner Cotton.
Thank you. Good morning. As a former first and second grade teacher, I do want to recognize the importance of professional development, and for teacher candidates for professional learning that supports effective and evidence-based teaching practices to ensure that all students are best prepared to meet and exceed California's rigorous standards. Our state superintendent is focused on procuring legislation and funding to support current teachers in effective evidence-based professional development in both literacy and mathematics at this time. CDE also recognizes the importance of professional learning for teacher candidates to effectively start their very important work. It could be life-changing work for our young people with their students. I understand and support also the procedures and protocols of the commission, including the accreditation framework. And I support this motion to send this back to the Committee of Accreditation for accreditation for further review. Thank you.
Commissioner Whitesmith.
Thank you, colleagues. I share also in the former commissioner's commendation of the committee on working on this. As a parent of a student who is dyslexic, in the state of California, I can tell you from personal experience, we did not even recognize dyslexia until about 2018. So I also want to commend the state, and I also want to commend the commission for ramping up our efforts in this area so quickly and so fast. And this is a big lift. SB 488 is no small feat. And I appreciate the COA in their due diligence. And I support the recommendation to remand this back to the COA. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Good morning, everyone. And I wanted to say thank you to Ms. Sullivan, Mr. DeGear, Ms. Hickey here, who, and the commission staff and all of the mentors that are out there working in the field with our institutions that are seeking accreditation or are seeking to come online as a provider for our students and our educators here in the state of California. You all do a great job. And I know that what you all do benefits all of us directly. And I don't want to diminish any of that in these conversations that I've heard, from some of our speakers. I do appreciate all the presentations given, but I also want to instill, the confidence that you all are doing the best work. I am the liaison to the Committee on Accreditation, and I have seen the deliberations in person, especially when it comes to this particular institution in question, Northeastern. They seem very forthright. There was a lot more deliberation, it seemed, for this particular institution than others, from my observation. So there was a lengthier vetting process for them. And that was just, again, as an observer, a lot of other institutions that are California based, they're easier to, I guess, get through. But because of the fact that Northeastern is based out of state, there was a lot more of a rigorous process for them to become approved. And not that they did anything particularly different for Northeastern, it just took longer time to vet them because they had a lot more questions for them about specific aspects of the rubric that is used for the approval process. The other thing that I want to say about the Committee on Accreditation is that it is full of the experts, the people who know their stuff. They know exactly what they're doing. They're very intentional and methodical with their process. And so I have every confidence that even if this body chooses to follow the motion and vote to remand it back to the Committee on Accreditation, that these folks will still receive their accreditation. I'm fairly confident about that because of what they've already said and presented to get them to this stage of the game in the process. The last thing that I want to say about this is that I am heartened that if it does get remanded back, that I get to be part of that process where I get to observe what Northeastern has to say about the reading program that was quoted from a particular course syllabi. And want to say one more thing, and I apologize for saying that that was the last thing, but this is the last thing. One of the commenters online, or a couple of them, and I've said this before in public, use particular demographics to prop up their point, and sometimes their points are perceived by this particular guy here as misguided. I want to encourage the public to stop using Black and brown children to prop up their misguided views on what's happening in schools, because I am one of those people. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I did not read my first book from cover to cover until I was an 11th grader. And reading level, it does have something to do with your success in life. It does have something to do with your academic success in school. It is not the only thing that determines what kind of human being you are. That's the first point. The second point is this, and I think Commissioner White-Smith said very plainly yesterday, very clearly, with that example about the kindergartner. We have home training at home. There are some things, and with respectability politics, when we come to school, we are respectful children. We're respectful to adults. When I go to school and someone asks me if I've read, I'm very honest and I say, no, I didn't read the material, but I'm a bright person. I probably can answer all your questions. And that's how I got through to 11th grade without having read a book. The other thing I want to say is we're talking about a population of about 7% of the total children in California. And that's not an insignificant number, but that represents all of the African-American children in our public school system here in California. And if you say to me 25% of that 7% aren't achieving, and so that proves my point. That is not a mic drop for me. What is working for the lion's share of the students in other places? If we're talking about 75% of the total population of California being a particular color, and successfully they are achieving at reading, what is that magic bullet that's working for them, right? And so I think with best practices, we need to be looking at that as opposed to grouping disadvantaged children together in categories and saying, see, what we're doing is wrong because it's failing them. Culturally responsive teaching practices are what's going to work to teach those children to read, not necessarily, what Commissioner Fredia said about whole language or phonics. Those are tools, right? But culturally responsive approaches to education, MTSS, I think that was mentioned at some point. These are strategies that have been proven to actually work. That's the actual science of teaching. I'm not talking about the science of reading. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? There is a motion on the table by Madam Chair Gunashire and a second by Commissioner Jeanette Brown to refer the concerns to the Committee on Accreditation for consideration and possible action. Will the recording secretary call for the vote?
Jeanette Brown.
Aye.
Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Cheryl Cotton.
Aye.
Juan Cruz.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Peter Quino Shire.
Aye.
Megan Gross.
Aye.
Johanna Harwick.
Aye.
Susan Aradia. Bonnie Clark.
Aye.
Ira Lit.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Fong Yuzoff.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Hickey, Ms. Sullivan, and Mr. DeGear. Thank you to all the public comments as well. At this point in time, we're going to take a short break. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Let's do 10. All right, be back at 10:04. All right. We are back. Thank you everyone for coming back. We are now on item 3D. Item 3D is the teacher supply in California, 2022-2023, a report to the legislator. This item is being presented by Fifi Lau, Jack Boss, and Kristen Calderon. This is a information item. Ms. Lau, will you please begin?
Thank you. And good morning, commissioners. Happy Friday. Item 3D is the teacher supply in California, 2022-23, a report to the legislator. The commission publishes this report every April. All summary tables are presented within this agenda item, and detailed tables are available in the appendix. The appendix can be accessed on the April 2024 Commission Agenda webpage and by clicking the appendix link provided on page 2 of the agenda item. The teacher supply 22-23 data are also accessible by clicking the hyperlink labeled California Educator Supply Dashboards page 2. Why is the teacher supply report annually submitted in April? Assembly Bill 471 requires the annual reporting of the teacher supply. As per Education Code 44225.6, the Commission is required to report on the number of teachers who receive credentials, certificates, permits, and waivers to teach and serve in California public schools. A detailed listing of the requirements can be found on page 2 of this agenda item. This report mainly focuses on teaching credentials, specifically the multiple subject, single subject, and education specialists, as well as the permits,
waivers, and certificates associated with these teaching credentials. In today's presentation, I, along with my colleagues, Jack on Zoom online, and Kristen here, will highlight selected findings from the 2022-23 fiscal year teacher supply report. Data on these selected findings will be available in the teacher supply report, which we will reference during the presentation, and or to a Commission Educator Supply dashboard, which a link will be displayed at the bottom of the presentation slide.
All right, now let's talk data and start with the number of new teaching credentials issued in California on agenda item page 4. Table 1B on page 5 in the agenda item and also on the presentation slide show the 5-year trend of new teaching credentials issued by preparation. Focusing on the most recent year in 22-23, there was a total of 14,636 new credentials issued by California IHE prepared program sponsors, California LEA prepared program sponsors, those would be the district and county, and out-of-state, out-of-country prepared institutions. Teachers who already hold a comparable teaching credential outside of California are identified in the out-of-state, out-of-country prepared institutions. This follows last year as the second year of decline in teaching credentials issued. When looking at candidate completion by California IHE prepared program sponsors, there was an 11.7% decrease in new teaching credentials issued. Further, there was a decrease of 20.2% by California LEA prepared program sponsors between 21-22 and 22-23. For out-of-state and out-of-country preparation, the number of new teaching credentials issued has decreased by 7.6% between 21-22 and 22-23. Moving on to page 9, table 3B, and on the presentation slide, data shows the change in the proportion of new credentials issued by preparation in the last 5 years. The 5-year percent change between 18-19 and 22-23 show that for the California IHE traditional route, the proportion of total new credentials issued was 53% in 18-19, while it was 55% in 22-23. That is an increase of 2%. California IHE University intern route showed a decrease during the same time frame, 22% in 18-19 to 18% in 22-23, decrease of 4%. For California LEA intern prepared route, there's an increase by only 1 percentage point, 3% in 18-19 and 4% in 22-23. Out-of-state, out-of-country prepared showed some fluctuations of total new credentials issued in the past 5 years, but the 5-year percent change has leveled out with an increase from 22% in 18-19 to 23% in 22-23, an increase of a single percent point. Overall, California IHE traditional route, LEA intern prepared route, and out-of-state, out-of-country showed a 5-year percentage point increase, while only university intern showed a 5-year percentage point decrease.
Next on agenda item page 8, table 2A, and on the presentation slide, data show the breakdown of new teaching credentials issued by 3 credential types: multiple subject, single subject, and education specialist teaching credentials for the past 5 years. When looking at the most recent 22-23 year, data show that there was a decrease in all credential types from the prior year: multiple subject by about 15%, single subject by about 4%, and education specialist credentials by about 15%. On agenda item page 8, table 2B, data show the 5-year trend of the percentage of total new credentials issued by credential types. Focusing on the most recent 22-23 year, out of the 14,636 new teaching credentials issued, multiple subjects consisted of about 39%, single subject credentials consisted of about 40%, and education specialist credentials consisted of about 21% of the total. When looking at the data in the past 5 years, there's been a slight change in the proportion of teaching credentials issued. The 5-year percent change between 18-19 and 22-23 show that multiple subject, there was a decrease from about 42% to about 39%, a decrease of 3 percentage points. For single subject, there was an increase from about 39% to about 40.5%, an increase of 1.5 percentage points. And education specialist credentials went up from about 19% in 1819 to about 21% in 22-23, an increase of 1.5 percentage points. Overall, the proportion of new credentials issued between 1819 and 22-23 show a decrease in multiple subject and an increase in single subject and education specialist credentials.
Sorry. Next, agenda item page 9, table 4A and table 4B, and on the presentation slide, data display the number and percentage of new credentials recommended by 3 IEG segments: California State University, CSU, University of California, UC, and private independent colleges and universities for the last 5 years. On the presentation slide, the total number of credentials issued are indicated at the bottom of the bars, while the percent of total by segment are represented at the top of the bars. When comparing the proportion by percentage of new credentials issued by each IEG prepared segment in the most recent 22-23 year, both CSU and private independent colleges and universities prepared more than 2/5, and the UC segment prepared the remaining 7% of new teaching credentials issued. When comparing the proportion by percentage between 2018-19 and 22-23, there was an increase of 2.1 percentage points for CSU, a decrease of 0.2 percentage points for UC, and a decrease of 1.9 percentage points for private independent colleges and universities, which caused a slight shift in the proportion in the last 5 years. Let's see this. Sorry. Next on agenda item page 11, table 5A, and on the presentation slide, data display the 5-year trend of the number of new intern credentials issued in California. Intern credential holders are teacher candidates in the teacher pipeline, specifically employed as a teacher of record in a TK-12 classroom while concurrently completing coursework, supervised clinical practice, and other program requirements to earn their preliminary teaching credential. There are 2 types of intern programs: the university intern program offered by IEGs and the district intern program offered by LEAs, which are the counties and districts. Focusing on the most recent 22-23 data, for university intern credentials, there was a decrease in the number of credentials issued by 26% from the prior 21-22 year, and in all teaching areas. A 17% decrease in multiple subject, about a 19% decrease in single subject, and about a 38% decrease in education specialists. For district intern credentials, there was also a decrease by about 14% from the prior 21-22 year. When we look at the data by credential type, there was an increase by about 18% in multiple subject, but a decrease in single subject by 23% and education specialists by 22%. Overall, there was a decrease in all intern credentials issued by 23% between 21-22 and 22-23. Other teaching credentials, such as designated subjects teaching, are provided in the following sections of pages 12 through 16. Based on the new teaching credential data presented so far, let's take a look at an indicator that may give us insights in future teacher supply, specifically candidate enrollment in teacher preparation programs.
On page 17, table 8A, and on the presentation slide, data shows the 5-year trend of teacher candidate enrollment. Teacher preparation enrollment data is collected as part of the accreditation's annual data submission process, where institutions are required to report total candidate enrollment, the head count, which includes new and continuing candidates enrolled between September 1st to August 31st of each school year. As you can see, overall, there was a slight increase in enrollment from the 2021-22 academic year to the 2022-23 academic year. However, much of that is accounted for by continuing candidates, as the number of newly enrolled candidates has dropped for 2 years in a row. This means that the overall increase in enrollment can be attributed to continuing enrollees, which has seen an increase of 13.3% from 2021-22 to 2022-23. There may be a relationship of candidate enrollment and credentials issued, although it is important to note that the reporting of the data are not the same. For example, Candidates may enroll in a program that may take 1 to 3 years to complete before a credential is issued. Therefore, enrollment does not necessarily equal to credentials issued in the same year. Another note is a misalignment of the reporting years, where the annual data submission reports by academic year, September 1st to August 31st, and the credentials issued reports by fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. Other credential information and data tables in the following sections, such as English learner authorizations and child development permits, are available on pages 19 through 23. Now, we will move to the teaching permits and waiver sections that start at the bottom of page 23.
On agenda item pages 24 to 26, table 11A through 11C, and on the presentation slide, data show the number of teaching short-term staff permit, the STIP, the provisional internship permit, the PIP, the teaching permit for statutory leaves, TIPSL, and limited assignment permits issued in the last 5 years. Let's take a look at each permit individually and start with the STIP issuances. A STIP is issued to individuals to fill a classroom immediately based on an acute staffing need that was unforeseen by the school district. For the most recent 22-23 year, there was an increase of STIPs issued by about 83% and in all credential areas. 115% increase in multiple subjects, about a 75% increase in single subject, and about a 57% increase in education specialists from the prior 21-22 year. Next, let's take a look at PIP issuances. A PIP is issued to individuals when a school district has an anticipated staffing need due to not being able to recruit a credentialed teacher after a diligent search. There was also an increase in the number of PIPs issued by 73% between 21-22 and 22-23, though it was mostly contributed to the huge increase of about 80% in the multiple subject credential area. There was an increase in single subject area as well by about 58%, and in education specialists by about 74%. Next, let's take a look at TIPSLs, which was developed in 2016 and is issued to individuals as temporary teachers when the teacher of record is unable to teach due to a statutory leave, medical or otherwise. Data show that the number of TIPSL dropped significantly in 21-22 and increased slightly by 2 issuances in 22-23. Leading to a slight increase of 0.4% from the prior year. Lastly, let's take a look at limited assignments. A limited assignment permit is issued to a fully credentialed teacher who is working toward an additional teaching credential in the area where the permit is held. Again, focusing on the 22-23 year, there was an increase in the overall number of limited assignment teaching permits by 8% from the prior 21-22 year, and in all credential areas. So there was a 28% increase in multiple subject, a 1% increase in single subject, and about a 26% increase in education specialists. Overall, when all teaching permits are combined, there was an increase of 53% from the prior 21-22 year, and also in all credential areas. About a 96% increase in multiple subject, an increase of about 35% in single subject, and a 55% increase in education specialists. STIPs are valid within 1 school year and cannot be renewed. PIPs are valid for a year from issuance and cannot be renewed. Limited assignments are valid for a year, but the multiple subject, single subject can be reissued twice in any one specific subject or in a specialty area for the education specialist. A TIPSL is valid for a year, but can be renewed based on the requirements. Next, let's take a look at the number of teaching waivers issued, which is on page 26 of the agenda item table 11D and on the presentation slide. Data display the number of waivers issued for the last 5 years. Waivers are issued or denied to individuals based on the school district's continued needs when a fully credentialed teacher, intern credential holder, or permit holder cannot be found to fill a teaching position. Looking at the most recent 22-23 year, there were 592 waivers issued, which resulted to a decrease of 31% from the prior 21-22 year. There was a decrease of waivers in all credential areas, about a 36% decrease in multiple subject, a 24% decrease in single subject, and a 33% decrease in education specialists. To summarize, the issuances of the specific types of interim permanent waiver documents issued in 22-23, with the exclusion of TPSLs in this slide and subsequent slides, the bar graph here shows that there were more SIPs issued as compared to the other documents. This indicates that more employers had to merely fill an acute staffing position based on the unforeseen need of teachers in the classroom in the 22-23 year. On page 30 of the agenda item, table 11F, and on the presentation slide, data show that the percent of total interim permit and waiver documents issued in the last 5 years. Between 2018-19 and 21-22, most issuances occurred in the single subject and education specialist areas, indicated by the orange and red color bars. The blue color bars indicate the lesser percentage of total documents issued. In the 22-23 year, there was a huge increase in the need for teachers in the multiple subject area as compared to the prior years. Next on agenda item page 31, table 12A and 12B, a comparison of interim permit and waiver holders versus fully credentialed teachers is provided at the statewide level. Data estimate that the interim permit and waiver document holders represent about 4% of the teaching workforce. This is calculated from the number of certificated staff employed for the year. In Appendix Table 5A and on the presentation slide, data were provided at the county level. Data show that most of the document holders who represented more than 4% of their teaching workforce, indicated by the orange and red colors on the map, are in the northern and central parts of the state. The percentage, though, should be viewed with caution due to the low number of certificate teachers in less populated counties. Alpine is the only county that did not request any intern permit or waiver documents in 22-23.
Next, let's take a look at the statewide picture of new teaching credentials, permits, and waivers issued in 22-23. There were 14,636 new teaching credentials issued by California and out-of-state and out-of-country preparation. Of the total, about 39% were issued in multiple subject, 40% in single subject, and 21% in ed specialist. There were 4,449 intern credentials issued, and 33% were multiple subject, about 30% were single subject, and the remaining 37% were ed specialist. There were 9,257 permits issued, which include only STIPs, PIPs, and limited assignments. 35% of permits issued were multiple subject, 36% were single subject, and the remaining 29% were ed specialist. Lastly, there were 592 waivers issued. Overall, for new teaching credentials, permits, and waivers, most of the issuances were in multiple subject and single subject. For intern credentials, most of the issuances were in education specialist. On this slide, data show the 5-year trend of credential shortage areas in math, science, and education specialist. It may be interesting to note that the most recent 22-23 year showed a decrease in all areas for new credentials from the prior 21-22 year. To dig into the data a little bit more. On the left chart, for math permits issued in the past 5 years, our latest year of data has us at the lowest end of this range, with 30 candidates less than 2018-19. When looking at science, the middle chart, since 2018-19, there was a declining pattern in both the new teaching credentials as well as intern, permit, and waiver documents issued. On the right chart for education specialists, the gap between new credentials and intern, permit, and waiver documents issued has grown in the most recent 22-23 year by 1,467 issuances. Analyzing the number of intern, permit, and waiver documents allow the Commission to understand teacher demand. These data points are used as a proxy to project teacher demand, as there is currently no statewide methodology. Teacher demand can also be projected through local education agencies reporting of their estimated teacher hires that the California Department of Education, CDE, published annually on the California Basic Educational System, CBED's website. An analysis of estimated teacher hires data is available on agenda item pages 35 to 39. The next slides are also additional data reported, but not mandated by Education Code 44225.6 to provide a demographic profile of the teaching workforce as compared to the state population, enrolled TK-12 students, and new enrolled teacher candidates. Data are available on agenda item pages 32 to 35. And let's take a look at the trends for gender and race across the state population, TK-12 students, teachers, and teacher candidates.
While we power up the computer again.
Sorry about that. I got it.
Is there an outlet for it?
Okay. Probably. Sorry about that, everyone. I was fully charged this morning. I'm on Zoom again, right? We are almost done though, but the exciting part on the demographics is next. So I think we do want to present that. Oh. All right. I think I am back, but I need to sign. He finished the slide already, so it should be fine. Okay. Oh, that 20% went really quick. I thought we were going to be able to. I'm sure. Yeah, accept this.
All right, Jack, are you seeing the screen again? I can't see them anymore. Hopefully, yes. Okay. All right, on the presentation slide, the term gender identity is used for all four groups for comparison. The state population, as you see on the first chart, actually reports on sex rather than gender or gender identity, so only two options, female and male, are provided. On the second and third chart, a non-binary response for enrolled TK-12 students and FTE teachers was available starting in 2019-2020. And on the fourth chart, gender identity, including a decline to state option, is collected for new enrolled teacher candidates through the annual accreditation data submission. As data show on the first chart, slightly more than half of the state population is reported as female. In contrast, on the second chart, slightly more than half of the TK-12 student population is reported as male. Nearly 3/4 of teachers and new enrolled teacher candidates were reported as female, a proportion that has stayed relatively consistent over the last 5 years. Next, we'll look at race and ethnicity data. On the presentation slide, the race and ethnicity categories for the state population, the enrolled TK-12 students, and FTE teachers have been modified to reflect the federal categories for comparison with new enrolled teacher candidates. When we compare the race and ethnicity demographics from group to group and year over year, a couple important findings stand out. You can see that in both the California total population in the first row and the enrolled TK-12 students in the second row, The Hispanic or Latinx category has comprised the largest segment across all 5 years. In the FTE teachers population in the third row, white teachers comprise the largest group across all 5 years. For new enrolled teaching candidates in the fourth row, white candidates were the largest segment through 2020-2021, but as of the 21-22 school year, Hispanic or Latinx enrolled candidates outpopulate white enrolled teaching candidates, a trend that has contributed to the overall teacher workforce becoming more diverse each year, as shown in that third row. Across these 5 years, in the FTE teachers and new enrolled teacher candidate categories, the Asian proportion has remained consistent around 7 to 8% across the 5 years, and the Black or African American proportion has remained consistent around 4 to 5%. Similarly, the segment reporting as 2 or more races has remained consistent around 4.5%. Overall, the 5-year data indicate a rise in the Hispanic or Latinx proportion and a decrease in the white proportion of all population categories, although white teachers still constitute a majority segment of the teacher workforce.
So to conclude, the 22-23 Teacher Supply Report has been transmitted to the Legislative Office by April 15th, as mandated. The report highlights the following: the decrease of new teaching credentials issued via all preparation, that is California prepared and out-of-state, out-of-country prepared, and in all credential types, multiple subject, single subject, and education specialists from the prior 21-22 year. There was a slight change in the proportion of teaching credentials issued by IAGs in the last 5 years. There was a decrease in intern and waiver documents issued from the prior year. In contrast, there was an increase of all permits issued from the prior year. However, with a total of nearly 14,000 intern permits and waivers issued, mostly contributed to the permits, the estimated number of intern permit and waiver document holders represent a consistent 4% of statewide teaching workforce. This is largely due to the proportion of the overall certificate staff employed in the 22-23 year. Additional selected findings are on pages 39 and 40 of the agenda item. This is an information item only. We now conclude the 22-23 Teacher Supply Report presentation. If you have any questions about the data in the report, we will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Just a reminder, we do have a 2-minute limit. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Regina Chagoya, please approach the microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, Regina Chagoya, K-12 Vice President of Northern California for California Federation of Teachers. CFT is concerned about the decreasing supply of teachers found in the 22-23 report to the legislator. CFT implores that the commission do everything within their authority to facilitate an upward trajectory with the supply of teachers in California, and urge the legislator and the governor to make one of their primary efforts to address a potentially looming shortage of teachers. Free and appropriate public education is a cornerstone of our democracy and is at risk of crumbling. Thank you.
Mayuki Manzanedo, please approach the microphone and share your comment.
Hello again. My name is Miki Montanedo and I'm representing the California Teachers Association. CT would like to thank Commission staff for their work on this report. The 2022-23 Teacher Supply Report is a very sobering outlook and look into the current state of our teaching profession, especially in our state. And it's troubling to see the significant decrease in the number of incoming candidates and to see the lowest number of credentials being issued. This report, coupled with the already rampant teacher shortages across our state, should be on the top of all of our minds. Despite this concerning data, I'd like to highlight a glimmer. It's promising to see that there's been some increase and some consistency in the percentage of our African American and Hispanic or Latino teachers entering our profession. That's something that should truly fill us with hope as we look forward. But we must continue to identify and remove any harmful and unnecessary barriers like the TPAs for our teacher candidates. CTA is committed to partnering with the Commission to help address these issues. Thank you.
Angelica Salazar, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, Angelica Salazar with Public Advocate. Thank you for your work on this important report, especially for going above and beyond and giving us the most recent teacher demographic data that is publicly available. I have some reflection. The increase in short-term staff permits, provisional intern permits by 79% is very alarming. Access to fully prepared and properly assigned teachers is crucial for student learning, and these numbers suggest that our state needs to make bolder investments to recruit and retain our teachers. It is also very concerning to see the number of new teacher credentials fell by 11.2% last year, which represents the second year of decline. The number of new enrolled teacher candidates also fell by 12%. The data tells us the what, but not the why. We recommend ascertaining from teacher preparation programs and others the possible root causes of these drops in enrollment so that we can better direct our advocacy. As it pertains to teacher and racial and ethnic diversity, while we don't yet see our teacher demographics reflect the demographics of our diverse student body, diversity is slowly increasing every year, and the demographic data on new enrolled teacher candidates and prep programs gets closer to being representative of our students. It is critical to increase support for all teacher candidates and provide differentiated support based on what teacher candidates of color need. Let's make sure they get through their programs and through induction. Research suggests that all students benefit from having diverse teachers, and students of color especially experience greater academic achievement and social emotional development. Finally, the report accurately states that there's currently no statewide method of collecting data and quantifying teacher demand. This data is incomplete without knowing data on teacher hires as a percentage of total vacancies. We often struggle to find data on teacher vacancies, and the CTC's CalSAT system has been useful in centralizing state and local vacancy data. Would it be possible for the Commission to publicly update the CalSAT dashboard on a yearly basis? We can only access data from 2020 to 2021. Thank you for your consideration.
Brian Monroy, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Morning, my name is Brian Monroy. I'm the California Policy Manager for Teach Plus. We appreciate all the work it takes to put together the teacher supply report to the legislator. There were many interesting data points about the changes in the supply and demographic makeup of the teachers' workforce within the report. Some of the points that we found most noteworthy are that the number of new enrolled candidates fell by 11% as compared to the previous year. Additionally, minority populations continue to be underrepresented in the teacher population when compared to student demographic data. The gap remains the greatest when comparing Asian/Filipino teachers and student populations. However, we are encouraged that there have been small increases in the percent of African American and Hispanic or Latina teachers in recent years. Another noteworthy point was that special education continues to be an area of high need and shows the second highest projected need for new hires. As we read the report, it prompted many questions, including what factors are contributing to the decline in enrollment in teacher preparation programs, which teacher preparation programs equip the most effective educators, where do educators who leave the classroom transition to, and why do the participants in the teacher residency program, as captured in item 3E, better reflect the demographics of the student population? Understanding why these shifts in data are taking place is essential as the state works to ensure all students have access to well-prepared, well-supported, and diverse educators. We are hopeful that connecting the data systems through the Cradle to Career Data System, C2C, will enable state leaders and researchers to answer these outstanding questions and inform policy and implementation decisions at the state and local level. We hope that the vision for a teacher dashboard reflected in Senate Bill 1391 will help move the work forward to ensure the CTC can do that. Thank you for your time.
There are no additional requests for public comment.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? I see Commissioner Simmons, and then Commissioner Hartwig, and Commissioner Klatt. All right. And then Commissioner Cruz afterwards. Go ahead, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you for this data. This is, I think, my favorite report of the year. This is something that I actually use in my work as an HR person, and it's extremely helpful to have. And I would also, that glimmer of hope that you mentioned in terms of changing demographics, I think I'd also like to focus on that as a positive outcome of this. The 11% drop, of course, is the thing that everybody is interested in. Now, yesterday in EdSource, Diana Lambert had an article that posited that part of the reason why we have our teacher shortage right now is because of the layoffs that we had in 2007, 2008, and 2009. I haven't seen any data that actually indicates that, but it's very believable to me, because when you have family members who are being laid off, when you have friends who are being laid off, that tends to make you think that's not necessarily a stable profession that you'd like to go into. And teachers, I think more than any other profession, are nesters and like stability. I mean, our whole structure of education in California between CalSTRS, yesterday they were talking about the Social Security issues, all of that, tenure, all of those things push us into being people who like stability. And this year, according to the EdSource article, we are looking at 1,900 layoffs, and which is, I think it said 16 times the number of layoffs we had last year. And I don't know about your districts, but mine, the actual impact of budgetary changes are probably not going to happen until the 24-25 school year. So I don't believe that there is a statewide clearinghouse for the data on layoffs. I think CTA probably is the organization that has the best data on that. Is there a way that either us or CDE could find that information? I know there's the Cradle to the Grave. I don't remember what that thing is called. Cradle to Career. And I wonder if that will help us. I know many years ago, CalSTRS came in and did a presentation for us demographically. I found that to be extremely helpful. I think at the time they said half of the teachers in California were capable of retiring because they're over 55, and that was a long time ago. So I think that kind of demographic information would also be helpful for this body. And so I'm just asking for more data than probably you have. But I do want to say how much I appreciate the report, and I will be referring to this all next year.
So I can tell you the Cradle to Career data system is planning a number of teacher dashboards. And one of them that I think so many people are looking forward to is they will be able to connect where teachers who leave the profession, what career area they go into next, as well as how much they make. So coming.
And I just wanted to add that in July of 2023, I'm like, what year are we in now? 2023. The scope of the commission's responsibility for reporting on teacher assignment data through the assignment monitoring program was expanded. And I don't know if we've talked about that since really just the little blip that was in the trailer bill when we presented on the budget back then. So the team is working on that expanded reporting right now, and it's intended to take a more holistic look at the teacher workforce as a whole. So this report presents on the documents that the commission issues, right? And how the preparation is translating out into issuance of credentials. But the expanded authority for us to present on assignment data and where teachers are in the workforce is going to give us a much different picture, and it's going to really combine what this report does with what's happening on the ground and where folks are working and what types of credentials they're working on. So we can look at, well, of those permits or of those credentials, how many of those folks are working and employed, and where are they employed? And so it's going to be really interesting to look at it in that way, but it's complex. And so given that expanded authority, we're digging into it, and we're going to be really excited to present. Right now, it's on the biannual agenda. I'm sorry, biannual. It's on the bi-monthly agenda for August. So that is our goal, to present those dashboards to you in August. So you'll be seeing us up here again soon.
Thank you for that. I have Commissioner Hartwig.
Great. Thank you for this report. This is also a report that I look forward to every year. I appreciate Commissioner Simmons' comments and a number of the comments from the public comments. And as I have a couple high-level comments and then a couple of questions. High-level comment is it has been very exciting and heartening over the last couple of years to see the expansion of data that we have started getting access to and that has been provided to us, because we ask similar, more info, please, questions every year about this. And it is exciting that we're starting to be able to reach out and have more info from more sources that the commission itself did not have before. I have to echo the alarm, of course, of seeing 2 years in a row of a decrease in credential holders, that is, new credentials issued. That is extremely concerning. And the major increase in STIPs and PIPs is also extremely concerning. So I know this is on everybody's mind, but I want to voice that deep concern. I had a question about that, which was, I did want to know, do we have any insight? Is there any impact on hangover from pandemic shutdowns on the number of new credentials that have been issued over the last year or two? Do we think is there any connection that we can see through something working through the system that might mitigate some of this, or is that not relevant to what we think is going on with the decrease in the issuance?
I think there probably is, although it's not something that we can quantify. Another thing I'll add is that, when we're comparing to the high years, especially I think it was 2021, that was a year where candidates could defer both the RECA and the TPA until they were clearing their credential. So a lot of candidates who had been held back by those requirements were all of a sudden allowed to get through. So that may have artificially increased the number of candidates for 2 years. So it's hard to know what's going on exactly. I know that the demographics of the state of California show that there's a smaller college age cohort right now. So a lot of our preparation programs are seeing, or the institutions themselves are seeing, lower enrollments. So there's lots of things going on that's hard to figure out what is really causing what. I would bet on, if I had to bet money, it would be on some of the things Commissioner Simmons said around the economy. I think it's getting more and more difficult to afford to become a teacher and to remain a teacher. That's certainly something that CTA has heard in their surveys, is a lot of teachers cannot afford to live in the district in which they're teaching. So I would say economics is probably the biggest part. And one of the new things that we included in this report are the number of teachers who hold an active credential. So when we talk about teacher supply, we thought it's important to look at the broader picture. And we have, at least 150,000 teachers who could be teaching in our public schools who are not. Now, some of them are here. Some of them are, and here at the commission, some of them are at the Department of Education. Some of them are at our higher institutions of higher education. But there are a lot of people who could be in a classroom and because of the working conditions are not.
You anticipate my next question. Thank you, Director DeGeer, because I was going to both highlight and thank this portion at the beginning of the report, which I found so interesting, about the 153,000 active but not being used credentials and the 291,000 expired credentials that could be renewed. And so I wanted to both observe that and highlight that, and thank you for that information, and also ask a question about that. And some of this question might, do we still have Commissioner Cotton here with us? Well, I can, we can convey this to her separately. I was heartened to see, well, we do have a possible pool here. So I know that our commission does not have control over things like hiring incentives and that sort of a thing. But as an education piece for us, you know, I would be very interested in learning about whether there are current efforts at the statewide or model districts that are thinking about how to reach out into this pool to help us fill the massive gap that we have. And then I was interested in asking Commissioner Cotton or someone else who might know whether there is any way to directly contact the, you know, this is what, 420,000 individuals to both get just information as we're talking about what they are doing now, why they're not using their or renewing their, you know, renewing their credentials. And so I was just, you know, we may not, the state may not get a very high % response from it, but it could be so important given I honestly was shocked to see how large these numbers were, but shocked in a good way of, wow, if we could solve even part of the retention, rehire, use your credential as long as you could, it could make a huge, you know, could make a huge difference for the state. So, okay, those are my questions, concerns, interests. Thank you.
Does anybody want to respond to some of those questions, or do we want to hold off?
As for who would have the contact information, you know, we have some contact information, but it's not something that we can share because of the state's privacy laws. I think the labor organization, so CTA and CFT, may have the best Rolodex, shall we say, of who has been a teacher in the past and is not teaching now. So they might be partners to work with.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Klatt.
Thank you. And thank you. I want to echo my thanks for the report and the presentation, and especially the tables. The tables, when make it's the visual aspect of that, I really do appreciate. And sort of the catch-22 for it is that I think the more you give us, the more questions we have and the more we ask for. So I am really excited about the thought that we will have access to a lot more information. It sounds like that's coming. And so I just want to add maybe kind of a question and perhaps a wish to that, to, you know, in the spirit of we want more. One is a question about the temporary and the provisional permits. Do we have a way to understand whether or not some of those are being issued to credential holders who have a credential, just don't have the right credential, versus being issued to someone without a credential at all? So that's my first question.
So yes, depending on the specific type of permit. So general education limited assignment and special education limited assignment permits are always issued to individuals that already hold a full teaching credential. And so they're working towards or covering an assignment in an area that they do not have an authorization in. So the permit, that's why the permit is renewable, like the team mentioned. So it's intended for somebody to complete those requirements to step into that full authorization and obtain that full authorization to serve in that assignment, in addition to the full credential area that they already have. And then those provisional internship and short-term staff permits, those are issued to folks that do not have a credential for the most part. There might be some very rare circumstances where someone might be teaching in or hold a credential in a general education area and they obtain a permit in a special education area, but typically that most of the time folks that hold a full credential cannot qualify for those permits. So they're intended to be for individuals that don't have any teacher preparation or are intending to enroll in teacher preparation. And so they want to serve in a classroom as a teacher of record while they're working towards getting that full credential.
Thank you for that, because I don't want to minimize the concern we should have over the number of those permits issued, but it makes me feel a little bit better to think that these are teachers who have a credential, and so that's helpful to know. And then my last question about it goes along, I think, with what Commissioner Simmons had said. I was going to bring up that report also because I found that really interesting when we had the age range of the current teaching force, because I think that time we heard that was before COVID. And my guess is that the retirement, and this is anecdotal, but my guess is that the retirement age has dropped significantly since that time period. And I think looking at the pipeline coming in, having the data about what bubbles are coming up in terms of retirement would be really important to have alongside this data. So I'm excited to hear that some of these, that we might have the ability to combine some of this information. So again, thank you for the report and for the tables there. It's sobering and alarming, but thank you for the way you've presented it in a way that we can really see the trends. So thank you.
I know I have Commissioner Cruz next, and then Commissioner Brown, Danette Brown, and then Commissioner Catherine Brown.
Yes, thank you. Just curious, I know that you've sort of alluded to some of the things that contributed to the significant growth of issuing these credentials in 2021 with some of the flexibilities. But I'm curious when those were in place, because we had a growth in 1920, right, when the pandemic first started. So I'm not sure if that's what contributed to that growth that early on in the pandemic. Certainly 2021, I know that has something to do with that.
So the deferrals went into place the spring of 20 because we sent everyone home.
Yeah.
March of 20.
Yeah.
So that's when they were done under an emergency order.
Okay, thank you for that, because I was curious to maybe there was something else that we should learn from 1920 that we could certainly look at moving forward. Just, some of the comments that have been made in regards to not just the pipeline of new credentials, but understanding the dynamics around whether people are burning out, the outflow of credentialed teachers is important in terms of just the workforce, whether they're retiring early or choosing to do something else, because with the declining enrollment, the number of teachers is not necessarily the same year over year. I know in my district, we're reducing our certificated staff by 20 teachers just because of the decline in enrollment. So we are not hiring general education teachers for next year as a result of the declining enrollment. That doesn't mean that we don't have a need in special education as everybody else. But just interested, looking at the data, not just in the retirement, but the burnout, because I think that has some opportunities for us to address the needs that we have in our classrooms. So, interested in if there's that data that is somewhere out there that we could look at and then analyze in terms of why people are leaving, so that districts and county offices, higher education, and everybody involved in this can maybe have something to do with it.
Commissioner Danette Brown.
Thank you again for all this information. My curiosity was piqued by a comment that Commissioner Simmons made, and then Commissioner Klatt really set up exactly what I wanted to say. I started teaching in 1996-97 school year, and that was the year we started class size reduction. And so there was an enormous number of teachers starting that year, the next year, the next year. There was a great demand. And we are getting close to that retirement age. So I would suspect, I'm curious to know the demographic makeup of the current teaching group. And okay, I'm not going to retire next year or probably the year after that, but it is on the near horizon. And so I think that's important information for us to understand the current teaching workforce. And we might be able to identify a bubble because that was a significant group of teachers starting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine Brown.
Right. I'm interested in a couple of things, and you're probably not surprised that I'm thinking of what I'm thinking about. But when I think about the expanded authority to report on the credentialing and permits, I have a question. Will that include the P to 3? And will that include the child development permit? Question number one. And around what Commissioner Simmons was talking about, teachers like and want a stable workplace. I think they also want opportunities. So my second question is about data relating to the movement from one credential to another or to add on something, such as multiple subject to P to 3 credential or ed specialist to P to 3 credential. So just kind of doing some thinking out loud rather than any request, just curiosity.
Thank you for those questions. So right now, the way we obtain our teacher workforce data is through the California Department of Education and their CalPADS reporting. And there is no mechanism for CalPADS to collect data on the state preschool or child development assignments. So we will not be able to report on where those folks are working through that data sharing agreement that we have. We will be able to report on the number of teachers that hold that PK to 3 credential, because that is our data, of course. And we'll be able to look at where those teachers are serving and in what types of assignments. We're working with CDE in the hopes that they will be able to collect a specific data point about TK classrooms. Right now, data is reported just as a general self-contained assignment, and there is grade data related to that, so we can kind of tease out what grade that self-contained assignment is for. But because the TK assignments are so new as far as the universal TK goes, it takes them time to update their data system. So we're working with them. I don't know that the first iteration of the new reporting will include that, but we hope to have that in future years.
And I can add that there is a multi-agency effort right now to build a database on early childhood employment. So the Early Child Information Data System, ECIDS is what they're calling it. ECIDS, Early Childhood Information Data System. So we're partnering with CDE, Department of Social Services, the registry, looking at how we can collect all that data and make it useful.
Commissioner Simmons.
Just such a great conversation. So you will, with the new data, you'll be able to tell how many people have multiple subject credentials that are serving in a general education classroom. So we'll be able to, because a lot of times when we just get the data, there's, it's not, we know the number of credentials that are offered, but we don't necessarily know how many of them are redundant. Now we will know that.
Yeah, the new reporting for assignments will take a look at the assignments as a whole. So not just who is misassigned. It'll be looking at who is appropriately assigned and how are they appropriately assigned. Are they appropriately assigned with an intern document? Are they appropriately assigned with a full credential? Now, what level is that credential? Is it a preliminary? Is it a clear? So we'll be able to give that full holistic picture of the teacher workforce.
I'm gonna Commissioner Gross and then Commissioner Davis.
Thank you so much for this report. I wanted to point out a glimmer
and it was in CTE pathways. And it's the second highest, 12.4% credentials issued in the Education, Child Development, Family Services pathway for CTE. And I'm wondering if there might be a partnership there with CDE to start tracking. Because I'm really curious, we get folks once they get to college, and that's too late for teacher recruitment. And we need to be recruiting second graders to become teachers and eighth graders, right? Like, because that's the truth, because we talk to them often we're our own worst enemy as educators because we know how hard it is. And we want our kids to maybe not have to do such hard things. When they're in second grade, we talk to them about being astronauts and scientists and doctors. So I make a real concerted effort in my house to be like, who's going to be a teacher? And so far I have my 9-year-old. My 14-year-old, I think, still thinks there's a professional video game opportunity for him somewhere. But I just really think the CTE pathway, like, that's where we got to get people. And we have to also, I think, as a state, really look at the economics. Because I'm a child of the 80s, and I was told in the 80s by my grandfather, who worked in a cannery, you want to become a teacher? Are you a fool? Like, I didn't work in a cannery so that you could become a teacher, like, right? Like, and that's a generational mindset, right? And beginning teachers now are paid what I was paid 17 years ago. And we are highly educated and poorly compensated. And I think that's a statewide lift, that's a private sector lift, that's a community lift. But if we could start capturing kids in second grade and make them teachers, I'd really love to see that data moving forward.
So there are a number of high schools that have career academies specifically on teaching. So I think that that's a promising practice. The other thing is, you've heard me talk about a statewide work group on apprenticeships. And one of the models that we're looking at is how do we build an apprenticeship model from high school through college to career in teaching. The biggest issue we're going to face is that apprenticeships require that apprentices are paid. So who's going to want to pay for that, high school kid through college to become a teacher? I think there's lots of opportunities in terms of before and after care and intercession work, but it is being looked at.
Commissioner Davis. I wanted to start with something that Commissioner Simmons and Commissioner Hart were talking about, cradle to grave, right? And Commissioner Hart, we talked about the 400,000 or so credentials. I know we don't track deaths in our profession. And so when people die, their credentials are still listed as active until they're not active anymore, right? And so even the ones that are there that are inactive, we don't know how many of those are deceased people or people who don't live in the state anymore, right? So there's a lot of information we just don't have. So I'm assuming that people who don't have an active credential, who have not activated it in a number of years, say 10, they're just not with us anymore. I mean, because why would you leave our profession, right? The other thing I wanted to ask in the form of a question is on page 10 of the document, in the data table there, when you talked about the slight decrease in the UCs preparing teachers, I'm wondering, and not that you all have an answer to this question, but if like pandemic was a factor there, assessments were a factor there, or if it was just like a lack of enrollment, and there all of these tiny minute factors that influence that, because again, UCs are a little more expensive than the CSUs, and are a lot more expensive than national board certification to clear credential. So I'm just thinking that, again, what Commissioner Gross was just saying, it's our initial compensation is, I'm sorry to do this, gross. And that we've not seen an increase in those numbers for beginning teachers in like forever. And I think the last time that was, and I think Danette was, excuse me, Commissioner Brown over here said about starting in 96, 97, that's when they started with the emergency teaching credentials, and so a big push in that area, and also economic incentives for people to just come into the profession. So you got a little bit of a sign-on bonus if you went to particular districts, and they said that they would pay you while you went to college, and to get your credential cleared and all that stuff. So those were all big deals at that time. The last point I wanted to and ask this question, an actual question, now an act question that I'm just going to just sort of answer, but about national board certification. When you clear your credential, will that be in future reports, even if the number is 0? Because I realize the legislation is so new that nobody probably has done that pathway yet, but at some point you probably will get a few folks who have cleared their credentials in that way. Are you planning on adding that information to your report? Thank you very much.
It's something that we could add. This report is really focused on preliminary credentials. But if that's something that commissioners are interested in, we certainly could look at that.
Well, and the only reason why I say that is because I know that talking to my colleagues at the CSUs and at the UCs, and I'm not just talking about the preparation institutions, but I'm talking about like the chancellor's office, for example. They had no idea that this, getting national board certification clears a credential. Like they just didn't know. And when I said it, and I know that one of the a couple of the people that work in the chancellor's office, I had an opportunity to talk to them just in passing at a dinner at LA State for a certain chair person here. And when we were talking, they were kind of stone-faced, and I just didn't understand the reaction. And I thought about it later, and I thought, well, if folks went and cleared their credentials somewhere else, that might cut into someone's bottom line, first of all. And then the other thing about the competition there, I think people can forecast, we've just recently got the surge of money into the systems. Now we're talking about pulling some of that away, but I'm thinking about the students, because I'm always student first. If it's cheaper to get a national board certification than it is to go through a UC or a Cal State program to clear a credential, why not try that? And especially since the state currently, hopefully they don't sweep the money, and that money doesn't sunset, the state will currently pay for you to become a credentialed teacher if you take that pathway. And if you go to a high priority school, you get $25,000 extra on top of that. Why wouldn't I go that route, right? But again, I don't think that is being touted at those institutions of higher learning and our preparation institutions as an option for candidates. So just highlighting that, I'm hoping that at some point, and I don't know if it's the commission's job to push folks in that direction, but that becomes more of a well-known process. Thank you.
I know there's a lot of rich conversation around this. I know Student Liaison Wicks would like to.
Thank you guys for this information. This is really insightful, especially as a current student teacher, to see what other parts of the state or other schools are experiencing. And first, I just want to talk about what Commissioner Davis just said. I didn't even know that was an option as a student, that you can get paid additional $25,000 and it's paid for. That's a route that isn't necessarily announced, maybe because I am at a current institution and they want me to, get my credential there since I'm already there and finishing up. I understand that. But I think information like that could be very helpful, because I know plenty of other students at my university who might have an interest in teaching, but sees like the price tag and sees all the different things that are barriers and might not just be as attractive as another career option could be, especially considering the type of school we go to in the area in which we attend school. So that's really great information to know, and that's something I know I would love to spread. I also want to echo, I heard one of the public comments say, like, through this, we see the what and not the why. And as like the student here, I just want to echo some of the things that you guys already kind of noted. And I know I've mentioned too, testing the TPAs, which I'm sure we'll talk about more even later. That is always a barrier as you continue through the process. It's like another test. And as you're paying for tuition and just life in college, it can be very difficult. Also, I want to echo the generational mindset that Commissioner Gross mentioned. It's very real. And every time I do say, like, I'm getting my teaching credential or I'm interested in going to education, the first comment is typically like, oh, really? Or why would you do that? Why would you pay for that? So just thinking of different incentives we can give to student teachers, and just seeing, like, again, the starting salary pay, especially being in California, being in Los Angeles for me personally, it is hard and it is difficult to look at and encourage other students to go pursue that career, although it is a great career. And I know through my student teaching experiences, I'm learning so much about myself and seeing that I can do it. So I think if we can even push students to at least try it, and go through the program, and maybe they'll end up saying, like, actually, this is a worthwhile profession. I do see myself doing this. And it's just to look different in multiple ways. I know that residency programs and some intern programs offer stipends. I'm learning about this new one that Commissioner David just told me about. Even it could be something as simple as like gas cards. I know, like in Malibu, having to drive 30 minutes every day to my school, and the prices of gas in that area is very expensive. So just trying to think of different incentives we can give to students at their universities, to increase them to get into the field. I think those are different conversations we should push to the table. And again, I know I've mentioned this before in my reports, like having that portal or webpage where I can talk to other student teachers, I think would be very beneficial in cases like this, so we can see what needs they want, because they are the ones going through the process right now. But also, again, thank you so much for this information, and thank you all for your comments. It's really helpful.
Yes, thank you everyone for your comments. Vice Chair Klatt.
Yeah, and just a really quick follow-up to what Commissioner Gross said. I talked about partnership academies yesterday, and I did a quick look. According to the Career Academy Support Network at UC Berkeley, about 20 of the 340 partnership academies in California are education pathways. So they are out there. It looks like they're almost all Bay Area and Southern California. They're not really spread out, but they're there. So if anyone's listening and wants to start a partnership academy, education might be a really great, something to consider. I'll throw that out there.
Thank you for that. I just want to add a little bit as well, just as you spoke to CT, it's something that I often work with that department through counseling, and also I try to bridge our education pathways with our community college partners. And so there are pathways there, but we need to build that excitement, right? And so back to what Commissioner Hartwig mentioned earlier, is there's districts out there that are doing innovative things. Because of those ESSER fundings, people were able to do hiring bonuses, right? Not a lot of districts did retention bonuses. Some districts did. They did use that money for retention bonuses. They forgot about the people that they have. But we know that money is sunsetting. That's going away. If you recall, in 2019, there was already a lot of talk about layoffs. And then COVID happened. All this money, influx of money came. If you go back to 2008, I was part of those layoffs. In 2010, where both myself and my wife with 2 young children were laid off. Luckily, I came back as 80%. My wife did not. And so I was looking at leaving the profession. I started looking at life insurance, all kinds of different things. And my wife, for an entire year, volunteered at my kids' school, right, with a teaching credential. And yet we stayed in education because this was our love, this was our passion, this is what we did. A lot of our young people want to be part of this, but they don't know how. They don't have the resources. If we become creative as far as incentives, there are other ways to do this. We see it all the time. CTE, it's building because there's money behind it. That's why there's a lot of kids that are interested. When you look at incentives, we really got to look at the real things, right? Housing, people need housing. The other part is going to school. Can there be a fee reduction, fee waivers for going to school? And other parts of incentivizing this profession is, can people get tax breaks? I know these are all out of our control, but I know I get a little tax break. Is it $250 or $500, right? I know I spend a lot more of that doing stuff for students, and so does my wife. But there are things that I know that we can do as a state for the folks that go into this profession. This profession is, we always say it's an honorable profession, but it's also a profession that is changing generations, and it's feeding all the other professions. So we really need to think about how we invest and how we can, and I don't mean just also in dollars, but also how we invest with our people, with those connections we make, because you talked about burnout, it's real, it's happening. We talk about retirement, people may not be able to afford to retire, right? And so we have to think about that as well. And so with that said, we have an opportunity. I think this report is great to have. It's information for us to build upon. We can look at what's not happening. And now we can say, what can we do to make an improvement? So what an opportunity we have with this report. I just want to say thank you so much for the report that you provided, for this to go out to the legislator. Hopefully the legislator takes a look at this and sees it also as an opportunity to make a difference in California for our children. So thank you again. This is an information item. No action is needed at this time, but I feel like Commissioner Hartwig wants to say something.
You just inspired me to ask a question I should have asked over the many years, which is, can you give us any insight into what does happen with this report? I know that it is required, but do you ever get follow-ups, questions from legislative staff? I'm looking for some hope here that all of this work is then absorbed by folks in the legislature.
I can tell you, I shared some of the data with legislators, both at Assembly and Senate budget hearings. And it also came up at a bill hearing earlier this week. So some are paying attention, yes.
And it sounds then like, but also it is a tool for the leaders of the CTC to be referring to when they're talking to legislators and advocating. Okay, thank you.
Again, this is an information item. No action needed at this time. Thank you, Ms. Lau, Mr. Boss, and Ms. Calderoni. Thank you very much. So get a read for the room. I got one more item. Can we keep going? Is that okay? Yes? All right. A lot of nods. So our last Educator Preparation Committee item is 3E, the update on residency grant programs. This item is being presented by Christina Naharo and Sarah Barwani and Andrew Brannigan from West Ed. This is an information item. Ms. Naharo, will you please begin?
Good morning, Commission members. I'm going to hop in with if you'll allow me to. So good morning, everyone. Dr. Kara Mendoza here at the Commission, and I'm the proud administrator who gets to work with the amazing grants team you'll see in front of you, and Andrew, who will also be here. So though that teacher supply report included some information about lower enrollments in our educator preparation programs, generated a lot of conversation, really good conversation. We are pleased to be here now to share a bright light, especially around our teacher residency grant programs that have been around since 2019. And these are the grant funded programs. Teacher residencies, of course, were here before that. The teacher residency and school counselor programs about which you'll hear today exist solely as a result of California's investment in grant funding for these programs. In light of that lower enrollment, we're very thankful to have these programs because they're showing promise in lots of different ways that my colleagues will talk about. But very importantly to me, as a former induction coordinator and director, a promise for retention. Now, we also heard about layoffs coming, and but early indicators is that teachers are staying who go through our residency program. So enough of me. I now welcome Christina Naharo, Sarah Barwani, and Andrew Brannigan, our colleague from West Ed, to share an update on our teacher residency programs.
Good morning, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here today and to introduce Andrew. just to set the scene a little bit, if you'll recall, in December of 2023, we shared with you the final report that was submitted to the legislature on the first batch of grantees authorized by the 2018 grant-funded programs. And Andrew is here today to present some data about those first cohorts, since he was not here at the table with us in December. And he is also going to do some initial comparisons between the cohorts authorized by that original 2018 legislation and the first cohort that we have data from on the 2021 legislation. So I will now hand it over to you, Andrew.
Great. Thank you, Kara and Christina, and thank you, commission members, for having me here. As Kara and Christina alluded to, I'm Andrew Brannigan. I'm a senior research associate at WestEd, where we've been conducting a formative evaluation of the teacher residency grant program since 2019. I'm going to quickly review the data so far from the 2018 grantees, compare it to the first cohort of 2021 grantees, and then talk a little bit about our evaluation work moving forward that we look forward to sharing with you. First, I wanted to review some of the developments of the teacher residency grant program since the beginning of the funding. So originally the program was funded in 2018, and additional funding was appropriated in 2021 and 2022. During this time, the resident funding has increased, starting from 20,000 to now 40,000 per resident. And residents may now qualify for the program under the criteria of diversifying the workforce, which I'll talk about in a little bit. 37 programs were initially funded in 2018, but to date, 98 more programs have been funded through the 2021 grant, though we'll only be reporting on the 18 of the 2021 programs, because those are the only programs that have had residents as of the end of last school year. And a statewide residency technical assistance center has been funded and launched during this time. All right, so first I'm going to share some data on teacher residency enrollment. Specifically, how has the resident enrollment changed over the first 4 cohorts of the 2018 grantees and the first cohort of the 2021 grantees. I'll note that most of these visuals are coming from the teacher residency grant program dashboard, which you can find the link to in the first page of the agenda item. So first, this visual shows the number of residents that programs reported enrolled during each school year since TRGP launched. The number of TRGP funded residents has increased during the 21-22 and 22-23 school years. So the most recent reporting residents, which are the residents that did their training during the 22-23 school year, are split between residents funded using the 2018 grant, which you'll see in light blue, and those funded as the first grantees of the 2021 grant, which are in light green. So for the rest of the slides, I'll talk about those two groups separately, separating out the 2018 and 2021 grantees from the 22-23 school year. So residency programs, which are grant-funded partnerships between LEAs and colleges or universities, funded through TRGP, tend to be small, with the majority of programs across all cohorts having fewer than 15 residents. You can see that on the dashboard I mentioned. This visual shows the median number of residents in residency programs in each cohort. So for the first 4 cohorts, the median program size was between 6 and 8 residents. But in the first cohort of 2021 grantees, the median program size was 12. The relationship between program size and whether they're meeting district needs is an open question, which I'll talk about later. This visual shows the criteria by which residents were funded across cohorts of the teacher residency grant program. So in the first 4 cohorts, around a third were education specialists. And then between 20 and 40% were STEM residents or bilingual residents. And as I mentioned, for the 2021 grantees, programs were allowed to qualify residents for funding by using the diversifying the teacher workforce criteria. In the first cohort of the 2021 grant, as you can see in light orange, 61% of residents were coming in under this criteria. When you dig into that 61%, it represents 126 teachers. About half of those 126 teachers were coming in, were multiple subject elementary clinical placements. Around a quarter of those teachers were single subject non-STEM secondary placement. And then the remaining teachers were STEM, special ed, and other areas. This visual shows the race ethnicity distribution of resident teachers by cohort. The first 4 cohorts from the 2018 grant diversified the teacher workforce, bringing teachers into the workforce that were more reflective of California's student population. And when you look at the first cohort of 2021 grantees, they had a similar racial ethnic diversity and had the largest proportion of residents identifying as Black or African American of any cohort. But across all of these cohorts, they closely match the race, ethnicity, demographics of students in California, which can be seen on the dashboard. How are residents distributed across California? So these visuals show the counties in which there were districts with teacher residency grant program residents. The lighter blue color indicates a smaller number of residents, and darker blue indicates a larger number of residents. Residents funded through the first 4 cohorts of the 2018 grant were distributed across 18 counties in the state. And Los Angeles and Fresno County had the largest number of residents. In the first round of the 2021 grant, 3 additional counties had residents: Riverside, San Mateo, and Tulare. So in all, 21 counties out of 58 have had TRGP residents as of the end of the 22-23 school year. But as I said, it's important to remember that this is only reporting on 18 of the 98 funded programs from the 2021 grants. So quickly to review, program enrollment has increased modestly in the last 2 school years that have been reported on. Programs tend to be small, but the first cohort of 2021 grantees were larger than the 2018 grantees. We see that residents are more coming in under the diversifying the workforce criteria. Residency programs across all cohorts diversified the teacher workforce in California and were more representative of the student population. And residency programs have been concentrated in 21 counties in the state to date. So building on the enrollment data, WestEd will be looking at how residency programs are scaling in California and within districts and counties, specifically looking at how significant of a pathway these residencies are and how these residency programs are addressing and meeting the needs of districts and addressing teacher shortages in specific content areas. Next, I'll quickly share some data about resident hiring and retention. These visuals show data on resident hiring from the first 3 cohorts of residents. On the left is the percent of residents that were hired. On the right is information about where they were hired. Around 90% of residents were hired across the first 3 cohorts, and 74% of them were hired in the same LEA. between 10 and 20% were hired, but in a different LEA or in an LEA that was not reported by programs. And this visual shows data on resident retention across the first two cohorts of resident. Specifically, were teachers that did their residency in 1920 and 2021 still teaching in the 22-23 school year? And what we see is 88% of cohort 1 teachers and 84% of cohort 2 teachers were teaching in the most recent reporting year. So around 90% of resident teachers in the first 3 cohorts were hired, and nearly 90% of residents in the first 2 cohorts were still teaching in the most recent reporting year. And Wes said we'll be building on these retention findings by investigating how teacher residents' retention rates compare to those of similar teachers from other preparation pathways. And how do the retention rates vary by teacher demographic characteristic and characteristics of placement schools and districts? And we look forward to sharing this data with you in the future. And thank you for having me with you. And I will send it back to Christina and Sarah.
Thank you, Andrew. Your work on providing this data to us is so valuable in measuring the progress and the lessons learned from our grantees. I'll just ask that you please stay on the line in case there are any questions from the commissioners for you. As we heard from Andrew, and as we see in the item, the teacher residency grant program is successful in recruiting a more diverse teacher workforce that is being retained at a higher rate. Commission staff are pleased to announce that at this point, the majority of the $350 million approved in the governor's 2021 budget has been awarded. Specifically, 93% of the $25 million earmarked specifically for capacity grants has been awarded, and 83% of the remaining $325 million for implementation and expansion have been awarded. This 83% is a little bit different than what you see in the agenda item because it includes the 4th round of implementation and expansion grantees that were awarded on April 8th. And staff will continue to communicate RFA opportunities to the field as they come up. And I would now like to introduce my colleague, Sarah, who will share an update on school counselor residency grant programs.
Thank you, Christina. At this time, 3 rounds of school counselor residency capacity grants and 1 round of implementation grants have been awarded. As all grantees have been funded in the current fiscal year, staff have not yet collected expenditure or annual reports from these programs. We look forward to being back in front of the Commission in early 2025 with initial program data. RFAs for both school counselor residency capacity and implementation will be released next fall, 2024. Additionally, staff will be back at the table with our colleagues from the Statewide Residency Technical Assistance Center with an update on their work in October 2024. Thank you. We are available for any questions commissioners may have.
All right, thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
Angelica Salazar, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning again. Angelica Salazar with Public Advocates. Thank you for sharing these exciting updates on the Teacher Residency Grant Program. We are very excited about the utilization of this program and have some observations and questions. The data show that 56 teacher residents, or 27%, were not recommended for a credential, and in the majority of cases, it was a result of failing an examination. This evokes ongoing questions about the additional support that is needed across pathways to help students pass exams And we hope that the proposed streamlining of the basic skills requirement and the broadening of the subject matter domains for expanded coursework review of subject matter competence that's in the governor's budget proposal will help teacher candidates progress through their preparation. This data also reinforces the need for the study group that this commission has previously discussed convening to review all the requirements, exams, and assessments with an equity analysis. It's hard to know from this data if teacher candidates of color were just as likely or less likely to be on track to complete their programs on time, given the different start dates. My question is, why did 10 out of the 24 Black residents and 78 of the 110 Latinx residents complete their residency programs within the year? These numbers seem comparably lower than the other teacher candidate subgroups completion. Still, we commend the effort to recruit diverse candidates, as these demographic figures on race and ethnicity are much closer to reaching representation of our diverse student population. We're thankful for the commission for supporting teacher candidates access these teacher residency programs, and we see the positive results that are already associated in helping diversify and strengthen the pipeline. We look forward to reviewing ongoing evaluations and supporting further investment. Thank you.
We have no additional requests for public comment.
Okay, the public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Hartley.
Thank you for this this item that I know is bringing smiles to lots of faces, including my own. It's exciting to see the development of the residency grant program and to be able to demonstrate how worthwhile the investment that the state has been having us shepherd has been. And I'm pleased to see the large percentage of the new program participants coming into the diversifying the teacher profession program. I had a question about potential geographic coverage of the program. And so this is just more an informational question I have that I don't know that you'll be able to answer right now, but I'm curious. So I think that it showed that there were 37 counties that do not have, maybe I think it was like 37 counties that do not have any residency program yet that is participating. And I was just curious about whether we know of those counties, how many could potentially participate? In other words, how many of those counties do have an IHE that might be able to collaborate versus how many do not have players who would be able to collaborate? Because in my mind, that would just help me understand what the ceiling for our geographic spread is in terms of were we to get additional funding, how far across the state we might be able to spread. Thanks.
So the data that Andrew shared with regard to the county counts, we suspect that there are several more counties at the very least. The data that Andrew presented was from only the 18 grantees that were in addition to the original 37 from the first round of grant funds. We have about 80 more that have been awarded that started their programs in the 23-24 fiscal year. So we don't have their first set of annual reports yet. So that those counties will be included next time we're at the table. And the statewide residency technical assistance center, this is definitely something that they are aware of and are purposefully reaching out in using their hub region contacts to try to recruit counties and districts who do not have a presence yet.
I can add quickly that when looking at all of the residency programs that have been funded, we haven't been able to report on yet. It brings the number of counties up to 35 counties from currently 21 counties have had residents. And when you add in all of the other programs that have been funded but haven't reported, it's 35 so far.
That's great. Thanks. That's helpful. And I guess my follow-up question that I'm just curious about is about whether there are counties where we think they would never be able to participate in this because they don't have IHEs who would be able to collaborate. I'm just more curious about that and about creative thinking about how those populations might be able to be ultimately served by these highly qualified teachers who want to stay in their districts. So that's more a wondering about creative abilities to spread the love of this program across the entire state.
I will add, because never say never is not in my vocabulary. However, it's possible that a region may not be able to be met. However, I will say when Andrew had that California slice with all the colors, and we saw a lot of gray in Northern California. Okay. But we saw this little blue beacon of hope, and that is Humboldt County. They are one of our hubs for the statewide residency technical assistance center. And they are already, we had the coordinator that's at that program already did the road show across Northern California, talking to this superintendent, that county office. And, you know, in the county offices, that was a modular county office building next to the elementary school. So, you know, she is on the road drumming up interest and possibility. So it's really quite exciting.
That's great. Thank you.
Chair Gunnershire.
I know we're short on time, but I wanted to thank the staff and our colleagues at Wested for this bright spot. It is encouraging to see how state investments are really paying off. So thank you. I also wanted to lift up the comment by our public advocates or request by our public advocate colleague regarding the study group. Can I ask staff to come back and tell us about that?
Of course. Are you asking about the examinations not being passed? That's the particular piece of what that comment was. Yeah. We could probably dig in a little bit and this is all data that comes from our colleagues in the field who are running the teacher residency programs. And we often talk about a balance between getting the information and not being too much of a burden on our colleagues in the field. So we will see what we can do to bring some information for sure.
I would like to add just one bit to that. This is another wonderful piece of work that the Statewide Residency Technical Assistance Center, we call them SRTAC. It's hard for me to remember all the words. So SRTAC is absolutely taking this up as well. They are highlighting one particular local district who has involved their LEA partner in providing support for examination preparation. So the IHE and the LEA together are really working to support by using the experts at the IHE and reading specialists, for example, in the district, to make sure that teachers are prepared for the RECA. So SRTAC is absolutely providing some best practices in that work to other grantees.
Cool. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown?
Just a quick question, and this isn't part of my expertise, but in looking at the school counselor residencies, I see that it's focused mostly on 23 and 24. I just hope to hear over time, school counselors are so important in terms of being support staff. I know we mostly focus on teacher residencies, but I'm hoping to see ways in which those numbers can increase.
Well, the funding only began most recently. So indeed, Sarah Barwani, sorry I jumped on your toes, but she will be bringing back all the information once we get up and running. And I referenced before the funding hit the commission in 2018-19, there already had been teacher residency programs. You know, there was federal funding, our IHEs had teacher residency programs. School counselor residency is brand new. It's a brand new concept. So we might have a little bit slower beginning, but certainly lessons learned from teacher residency are already influencing school counselor residency. So we're very excited about the possibilities.
So are we. Yeah, thank you.
So I won't belabor the point and say anything, but I know Commissioner Heredia would like to say something.
So one quick thing, I'm sorry, because I wasn't gonna ask this, but I think I will. So when I look at the number of people who don't pass, you know, the TPAs, the CAL or the ED TPAs, you know, I wonder what happens to those candidates, because you go through a residency program where you are mentored, you're in a classroom with all that mentoring, yet there is this assessment. So I'm thinking that someday when we have time, someday when you have time, you know, it'd be interesting just to kind of get an update. Like, do districts then kind of retain these people so that they don't just walk away out of all of that effort and time? So I just didn't know what them. You don't have to give me an answer now, but I'm just saying, I'm just curious, and because that's 8 people that, you know, that could be like 2 grade levels right there at a school site. So, thank you.
We actually do collect that information. We can, the programs do continue to follow those residents. This is one of the reasons that you may see the dashboard numbers changing from year to year. The numbers don't stay fixed. You see that there are more completers from a previously reported year. Every few months, those things are updated, because the programs absolutely do hang on to those teachers. A lot of times that person is hired as on a STIP or on some sort of emergency credential. And then once they pass the exam, their contract is switched into a teacher, you know, into a preliminary, a probationary position. So they're absolutely hanging on to those people. They're continuing to provide support. We are asking for that, and we are tracking those residents and asking programs to be, you know, responsible for making sure that those folks get across the finish line.
Thank you very much. This is an information item. No action is needed at this time. Thank you, Ms. Najarro, Ms. Barwani, Mr. Brannigan, and Ms. Mendoza for this report. We're really excited about it. Thank you again. And at this point in time, I have no additional items. I adjourn the Educator Preparation Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardenas. I'm now going to reconvene the general session. Commissioners, we have the report from the Legislative Committee and then a couple of other items before we close up. And I think we'll be able to accomplish that by 1 o'clock. So is everybody good delaying your lunch a bit? All right, thank you. Vice Chair Klatt, will you please reconvene or convene the Legislative Committee?
Yes, thank you. I now convene the Legislative Committee. The committee has 1 item before it today. Item 5A, status of legislation, is an information item that is available as an agenda insert. Jonathan Howard will present this item. Mr. Howard, I'll give you a second to get to the table. Sorry. I was so eager to begin. When you're ready.
I had to change my notes from good morning to good afternoon. Good afternoon, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Legislature returned in January for the second half of the 2023-24 legislative session. Since the return to the Capitol, legislators have introduced more than 2,300 bills, 1,613 are in the State Assembly, and 719 in the State Senate. Over 100 of the bills introduced are directly related to K-12 education. Of those bills, I'm currently tracking around 30, with an additional 9 or so that remain from last year. Legislative report in today's agenda contains 16 that most directly relate to the work of the Commission. Several legislative deadlines are rapidly approaching. April 26th is the last day for policy committees to meet and report bills to fiscal committees. May 17th is the last day for fiscal committees to meet and report bills to the floor. And finally, on May 24th, bills must have passed out of their house of origin. We should expect that some of the bills I'm tracking and the ones in today's report will not make it out of their house of origin. And the ones that do will likely look different when I present this report to you at the next commission meeting. Additionally, most of this legislation has not been heard in a fiscal committee. So many of these bills do not have cost estimates currently, and many have blank lines for appropriation amounts, or will have language inserted in them, such as contingent upon appropriations. One last thing, commission staff has been involved with practically every bill in the report. We've had meetings and emails exchanges with authors' offices, legislation sponsors, and Assembly and Senate committee staffers, both in providing context and background on the work the commission currently does, as well as providing technical support to legislators and committee staff. All of that being said as introduction, I'd like to highlight some of the legislation in the report. AB 2222 by Assemblymember Rubio would make several changes to how California educators approach the instruction of reading. The bill has provisions that would affect the California Department of Education, State Board of Education, the Commission, as well as local education agencies. Commission-specific provisions of the bill would require the Commission to update its literacy standards of program quality and effectiveness, literacy teaching performance expectations, and literacy instruction preconditions for program sponsors offering specified credentials. This update would have to be aligned with effective means of teaching literacy as defined in the bill and adherence to the science of reading. The bill would also require the Commission to create a probationary accreditation process for program sponsors that are not in compliance with the above provisions. It would require one member of the Committee on Accreditation to have demonstrated expertise in the science of reading and effective means of teaching literacy. Would require program review teams to reports to include a section on literacy instruction, and requires the Commission to have literacy experts on staff to develop these new criteria and standards and oversee the work of review teams regarding literacy instruction. While preparing an in-depth analysis of this bill for the Commission, news broke that the Speaker of the Assembly had decided not to have this bill heard in committee this year. Speaker has encouraged the sponsors and the supporters of the bill, opposition to the bill, and other interested parties to begin working together to work out some sort of deal for a bill next year. Commission staff are already in contact with both supporters and opposition of the bill, and we have offered our technical support to both, as well as legislative staff. SB 995 by Senator Padilla creates the High Quality Teacher Recruitment and Retention Act as a pilot program to recruit high-quality teaching candidates at 3 California State University campuses in partnership with 3 California community colleges. The bill would require these 2 segments to create a 5-year pilot program utilizing transfer model curriculum and dual enrollment practices that will allow for participating students to earn a bachelor's degree and a teaching credential in 4 years. This bill was heard in Senate Appropriations on Monday and was placed on that committee's suspense file. AB 1927 by Assemblymember Alanis amends the Golden State Teacher Grant Program to include college students who are interested in becoming career technical education instructors. The bill would require the California Student Commission to expand the provisions of the Golden State Teacher Grant Program to also award these grants to those who commit to working for 4 years as credentialed CTE instructors. The bill is in Assembly Education and will be heard on April 24th. AB 2473, which is being authored by the Assembly Committee on Education. The provisions of this bill mirror those found in the governor's January budget proposal regarding the creation of new elementary arts and music education authorization for career technical education teachers. That's why you'll see the very beginning of your report, there's an SBXXX that talks about the arts music credential, and then right underneath it, there's a bill that has this exact same provisions. The Assembly has decided that this budget proposal warranted special review by the Assembly's Education Committee. And so those provisions have been put into a separate bill and will undergo the normal bill hearing process. In the Senate, this proposal is being treated as a normal budget item and is being reviewed by the Senate's budget committees. This bill is scheduled to be heard next Wednesday, the 24th, in Assembly Education Committee. Finally, SB 1263 by Senator Newman. This bill would eliminate teacher performance assessments as a requirement for receiving a teacher credential. The implications of this bill on the teaching field and on the work that the Commission does would be quite impactful, which is why Commission staff have prepared a more in-depth look at this bill, which is in your packet. This bill was heard on Wednesday in Senate Education and passed out. It will next be heard in Senate Appropes. The chair and the executive director of the Commission submitted a letter of concern to the author and the committee members of Senate Education that highlights many of the points in the bill's analysis that you have. At this time, I'm not recommending the commission support or oppose any legislation. This is an information item. I believe we will have more information and a better sense of what legislation will look like in June, once legislation has gone through a fiscal committee and moved on to the second house. Thank you for your time, and I am happy to answer any questions the commissioners might have.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing star 9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Erin Giddens, please approach the microphone and share your comment.
And I should announce come on up, that there is a 2-minute time limit on comments. So I just wanted to remind anyone who might be on the phone or in the room of that time limit.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Erin Giddens. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a 5th grade teacher in Orange County, and I'm representing the California Teachers Association. As someone who did not pass the TPA on their first attempt and had to take a year off to finish it, I do feel a sense of responsibility to speak up on this item to ensure that things come better for the people who come after me. We would like to thank the commission staff for their work on this item. CTA is co-sponsoring Senate Bill 1263 with the California Faculty Association and Senator Newman. This legislation is a key priority for our organization. We believe that SB 1263's author, Josh Newman, summed up the issue succinctly at the Senate Education Committee hearing on Wednesday when he said, despite its well-intentioned purpose, the demand associated with preparing for the TPA have actually had the perverse impact of reducing the overall quality of teacher preparation by undermining the capacity of teacher candidates to focus on what's most important, which is their clinical practice. Over the past 20 years, the TPA is involved in high-stakes, time-consuming, and costly barrier for aspiring teachers. In credential program, candidates have the opportunity to show they are meeting teaching performance expectation standards all year long under the supervision and collaboration of their mentor teachers, university professors, and university supervisors. Many programs already have performance tasks embedded in their programs and give candidates to them in manageable chunks to show they are meeting those standards all year long. Regardless of the many hours a candidate may have shown in meeting the TPEs in their clinical practice, the candidates are expected to justify their preliminary credential with just 2 assessments. All the hours are dedicated to one snapshot that the candidate does throughout the time that they are addressing the TPAs, just one moment, as opposed to induction that meets where they would do it over time over a year. Sorry, that's my time.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Connie Campbell, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Thank you. I am Dr. Connie Campbell. I developed and currently support the Education Specialist Credential Program at San Diego County Office of Education, and we are currently a TPA literacy pilot program. I also initiated and coordinated the Cal TPA at Point Loma Nazarene University starting back in 2008. I don't believe Cal TPA is a barrier when appropriate candidate support is provided. A well-supported teacher candidate learns necessary components of effective instruction as they complete the Cal TPA, with key details about planning, delivering, and assessing instruction that could be missed without such an assessment. There are 2 key components I'd like to spotlight. San Diego County Office of Education, like many of you, has done a great deal of work recruiting and supporting diverse teacher candidates, and specifically focusing on barrier removal through our Educator Pathways work. We don't see TPA as a barrier for these candidates. In fact, Cal TPA ensures that candidates learn how to support diverse students in the classroom with the intent of more positive experiences for BIPOC students and for students with specific academic needs. This assessment ensures candidates focus on the very students who need the most strategic instruction and now in literacy. Secondarily, more positive learning experiences make the teaching profession more attractive to BIPOC students in the future. And the other factor I consider is that removing the TPA does not remove all the TPEs it assesses. As a program developer and leader, I feel the TPEs assessed by this measure allow us more capacity to create local assessments for the hundreds of other TPEs we are responsible for. So in my opinion, a performance assessment does not duplicate other requirements teachers must fulfill to earn the credential. It replaces former assignments with evidence-based and well-researched TPA-based activities. For these and other reasons related to ensuring quality instruction for the students of California, I support keeping the TPA in place and trust our commission to work collaboratively with the field as they always have to make sure it remains effective and meaningful for our candidates. Thank you.
Maiki, please approach the microphone and share your comment.
Hello again. I'd like to, my name is Miki Montaneda, representing CTA. I'd like to just expand on what my colleague came up here to share. You know, the way the TPA is structured, it's very different than to what those candidates will do in their induction programs, where they will have 2 consecutive years meeting their CSTP standards. The induction process is much more rigorous due to the fact that these new teachers need to show that they are meeting the CSTP standards all year long. In induction, new teachers get to collaborate and make choices to decide what is the best way for them to show that they are meeting standards. Now, the current iteration of the TPA has been proven to be ineffective at preparing educators for the realities of the classroom. And the CTC's own data shows that the TPA disproportionately harms aspiring educators of color, which leads to California students not having enough access to teachers who look just like them. Now, we're happy to hear the discussion around the commission being aware of the burnout of candidates and teachers have, but please consider how the redundancy that TPA imposes and contributes to that same harmful burnout. Now, I want to draw attention on into the insert real quickly. I'm looking at the, insert 5 that starts highlighting SB 1263. And I want to draw attention to the beginning of the last paragraph. The TPA is the only statewide measure of whether candidates can actually teach with real students in classrooms prior to earning a credential. With this, the way it's phrased, I want to pose the question, then at that point, what stops a candidate from taking the TPA before entering the classroom, passing it, and what is that to show then? Do they not need to do a credential program if they manage to pass their TPA? So I want to pose how there's multiple measures that candidates have to complete during their their preparation program that are measures of whether or not they can teach, and that this one snapshot shouldn't be the determining factor for them. Thank you.
Sylvia Kane, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Dr. Sylvia Kane. I'm Professor Emeritus at Vanguard University. I am also the retired Director of Graduate Education, but currently the Cal TPA Coordinator, because as you know, as educators, we never retire. But I would like to share our experiences with the 7 multiple subject participants in the LPA pilot where our candidates were placed. They were placed in K-3 classrooms, and as is our practice, faculty review our credential program frequently, and we found that there were some gaps in our literacy instruction as it applied to Domain 7. So changes were made to place a more comprehensive emphasis on literacy instruction for both multiple subject and single subject programs, which then helped prepare our candidates for the LPA pilot. A challenge we found, of course, with the LPA was that the candidates needed additional support, which we provided as they encountered the expectations of the LPA. But it created an excellent opportunity for collaboration and conversations around literacy instruction for both faculty and our. As a literacy specialist for the past 30 years, I'm pleased with the California emphasis on literacy instruction due to SB 488 for our teacher preparation programs. I understand completely the controversy over performance assessments. I am Latina. However, if we follow the research, we know that performance assessments are one of the most effective assessments because it evaluates the student as they perform the task, as in the case of the LPA, that is literacy instruction. Performance assessments are an authentic assessment that provides an accurate picture of students' learning as it helps to develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills. I fully support the TPA requirement. I was also an RECA scorer many, many years ago, and I believe the LPA will prove to be more reliable and valid than the short answer selected response format of the RECA. Thank you for your time.
There are no additional requests for public comment.
Thank you. Thank you for those in the room who commented and also those who provided written comments for us. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Simmons.
Okay. With regard to 1263, which I think is probably the bulk of our comments will be around, I really do believe that teaching is not easy. And because teaching is hard, I'm not opposed to becoming to the process to becoming a teacher also being hard. I just don't want it to be unnecessarily hard. And having worked with universities since 1987, somebody do the math real quick, and preparation programs, I can tell you I have worked with excellent programs and I have worked with lousy programs. And there needs to be a statewide measure of whether programs are adequate or not. And at one point, in one of the Scott bills from long ago, if you did pass the TPA, you didn't have to do a teacher preparation program. I'm actually not necessarily opposed to that. I think that if we have a good measure, if it is a good assessment, we should consider using it for that. And actually, the code may still be that way. So, the other thing I wanted to say is that I read yesterday's LPI, Learning Policy Institute article, and it I think verifies that we should have some concern just trusting programs to be able to say whether candidates are properly prepared or not. In those programs, they range from a TPA initial pass rate of 100%, yay, to 30%. If a program has an initial pass rate of TPAs of 30%, why are we letting them give credentials out? Approximately half the programs had an initial pass rate of less than 80%. That's not even a B. 12 programs are under 60%. When I taught math, that was an F. So, given all that, by the next meeting, and I'm only one commissioner, and this is an action item, so I can't make a motion, but by the next meeting, I'd like to know which programs are in that lowest quartile. I'd also like to know who had 100% because I would, they should be able to get a gold star. And I'd also like to know what technical assistance we are providing to those, I think I could say, inadequate programs. Programs that are getting the same tuition everybody else is, but their candidates are not getting those outcomes that they should get. I'd also like to know how many candidates finish the TPA after they are done with their program. Our CTA reps did a really good job of pointing out that if you are truly embedded, as you are with induction, under Ed Code section 44320.2, TPAs are also supposed to be embedded. So I'd like to know how many people finish their programs after or they finish their TPA after they're done with their program. At this point, when I interview new teachers, I have to ask them, are you done with your TPA? Are you done with your RECA? As a HR person interviewing new teachers, I shouldn't have to do that. Finally, I'd like to know the extent to which programs are supporting candidates who fail their first try at the TPA And in particular, I'd like to know the extent to which programs are supporting and assessing candidates who failed their first try at the TPA by less than one standard error measure. Was it our last commission meeting? Okay, at the December meeting, we voted to allow programs to bypass a second TPA. And we could say that if they were providing the support that they were statutorily required to do anyway, or at least regulatory required to do anyway, that they would, that the candidates would not have to take the test a second time. So really, that the second set of data on the cumulative pass rate for TPA, that chart should go away because the initial test is the only one that they should be taking. Now, we know all of the people who have failed the TPA. We have their contact information, and we know whether they were within one standard error measure or not because we have centralized scoring. So by the next meeting, I would like to have found out from all of those candidates whether or not their programs are supporting them and whether or not they are being assessed to determine whether or not they meet the requirements without having to take a second TPA. So that is a lot of data I'm requesting, but I think that given the situation that has been expressed and looking at the data in the LPI report, which is really a very pro TPA report, I think we have programs that are maybe not serving our candidates sufficiently. And I think that we should use the levers of accreditation to ensure that programs are meeting the needs of their candidates. I also would be interested in, I know I'm giving you a really long list, and I apologize. I would like to know where we are with the work group, because we've talked about that for months now. And given the need for all of the stuff that I've just listed out, I wonder if it would make sense to work with the author of 1263 to maybe move the legislation from doing away with the TPA to determining the extent to which CTC is enforcing Ed Code 44320.2. Do I need to go back and list the things I want? Or we got it? Okay.
Madam Chair?
May I make a friendly amendment? It sounds like you're requesting an implementation study with a number of requests, as well as requesting working with Senator Newman's office on this.
Well, you can't, I can't make a motion because it's an information item, so you can't make an amendment, but yes.
Oh, it is. Oh, darn. This is staff direction. Can we please ask? Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I think that Aaron Scuba came to the table to answer a question that may have arisen earlier.
Thank you. I did want to clarify to your question or comment about is there a mechanism for an individual to take the TPA and identify that they're qualified to teach? And there is that mechanism still in statute. It's called the intern early completion option, and it allows someone who has completed their intern pre-service hours to enroll in an intern program and basically take the TPA. And if they pass that TPA on their first try, they are issued their preliminary credential.
Don't they also need to take a test of teaching knowledge? Aren't both of those things still required?
There is a knowledge assessment, yes.
So there's a paper and pencil test of teaching knowledge and a performance assessment. Can you say more about what the intern pre-service is? It's not a full year of pre-service.
No, I believe it's 120 hours of pre-service plus 45 EL.
We are, you know, that's why people love us.
Echo.
We're very, very technical and, you know, we're niche, but it's really important. So thank you.
Yes.
Commissioners, I think we would welcome the opportunity and appreciate very much your thoughtful, well, only a couple of you have spoken. I hope the rest of you aren't so hungry that you can't think anymore. But, if it is the will of the body that we engage in further conversation with the author and the sponsor of this bill to see if we can perhaps refocus it on, determining what's going right or what's not going as right as we need it to around implementing the law as it's written, we'd be more than happy to do that and take that as staff direction. We have been engaging with the author. The letter of concern that Chair Grinnell Shire and I sent to the committee was intended to highlight some, the things that are really showing up in the analysis of this bill, and also to pull in some of the early findings here, or the just published findings of the Learning Policy Institute about the role of preparation in supporting teacher performance. So again, this has been a fairly primary theory of action for us since about 1998, that we should have some kind of performance assessment built fully into and fully embedded in teacher preparation as one of the criteria for earning a credential. We would love to continue to work on that theory of action, but to absolutely take in the concerns that we're hearing from the field from implementation, to continue to revise and refine, and both the instrument, which we've done, the literacy performance assessment that's just gone through pilot, has made some major structural changes in response, particularly to the survey that the California Teachers Association brought to us last year, identifying some real struggles that candidates were having. So again, there's an opportunity to continue to adapt the instrument. There's also the opportunity for us to really dig in on what are the implementation issues that are informing the kinds of experiences that our CTA colleagues have reported to us. We at staff level feel we have an obligation to attend to those experiences and make sure that whatever we're doing with the implementation of performance assessment is appropriately challenging, because this is a challenging profession and we need people who really can do it, but not overwhelmingly so. So given the opportunity to continue discussions both with the author and the sponsor, as you've suggested, and to bring you back information as you've requested, we're on board. We welcome the opportunity to do that.
Commissioner Brown. On that note, I would like to say I enthusiastically support all that stuff that David said in his non-motion. But I would like to revisit one of the facets that he brought up that I would love to have the information about, because I don't believe in my quick read of the LPI report that it was something that was included in there. I noticed that under existing law, it says, under the second bullet, a candidate shall be assessed during the normal term or duration of the preparation program of the candidate. And I don't know that that's happening or not. I don't know that we have that information. I would be very curious to find out if that is happening, where it is happening, and where it is not. So if we were to examine some of those, as you said, gold stars, that it is possible to do that, because one of the concerns that I have just about how it is implemented now is that it is a very robust assessment. It takes a long time to complete. If you are the person who doesn't pass on the first attempt, is there time to support you within the normal term or duration of the preparation program? Is there time? Because I know that we have discussed at our now I'm got my dates all, the -1 standard error of measurement. We talked about how programs would manage that. And we said, well, if they're still enrolled in a program, that would be part of their support. So I'm very concerned about timelines, because if someone takes the semester, let's say their second element of the TPA, and then they're not enrolled in the program, they can't take advantage of that -1 SEM analysis piece. without incurring more money. So I am concerned about the timeline and how these all fit so that the support we believe is in place is supportive to candidates and that candidates feel able to access that support. Because I know that sometimes we make the best plan, we have great intentions, but when it gets to the candidate's ability to navigate the options and to complete these tasks, which we want it to be difficult. It's not easy being a teacher. I'm just hoping that when the rubber hits the road, that the reality matches the theoretical intent of what we think is out there. So I would love to just have some bridge information to make sure that our theory and our practice inform each other. Thank you.
Commissioner Heredia?
I just want to support the idea. I mean, again, I'm coming back to these people who miss, don't pass it. So, and I'm interested in David's comment about, which programs are not offering the support and at the lowest. I got a text the other day from someone who missed, the score was within 1 point of the TPA. And it was my understanding, that's why I'm so glad I said I'm going to the commission meeting, it was my understanding what David had had stated, that you do not need to retake it, that there is something else that you could do within your program that would demonstrate competency, but not have to take this exam. And this student was asked to take the exam, take that part again. And they did, and they missed it by 1 point. And so now the student is saying, I think I'm going to walk away, And so I think that's why I'm worried about capturing the students, our teaching candidates, because, I do believe that there's multiple ways to assess whether or not someone understands what they're doing in a classroom all day long when you're with them. So just very concerned for this individual. Thank you.
Yes, I've heard from individuals experiencing the very same thing, and my plea to them is, please don't give up. Help us on the way. And the action that commission took in December to recognize scores within a -1 SEM was all put into a program sponsor alert. I'm looking at I'm seeing yeses from over there, and circulated to every dean and director of teacher education in the state. So that's something we definitely need to follow up on. And, I've been looking at our standards, program standard 4, program standard 5, in the multiple subject and the special education standards, and in the PK3 standards, speak directly to the expectation that the commission has that programs are providing a level of support that is not associated with standardized testing. You're not allowed to get that you can go through a tutoring program to pass a standardized test, but this being embedded in preparation is defined in your standards that we accredit institutions by. So the questions you're asking about, to what extent is that happening, are very important questions that we need to dig in on. And to what extent is this additional secondary passing standard that you've adopted at a prior meeting, to what extent is that opportunity being extended to candidates? So that's, and we're in the early days of that. However, the early days are, to try to go out and capture candidates who may feel like they've been flushed out of preparation now because they didn't get that opportunity, and to come back and take the assessment again has costs and other kinds of inconveniences, although that's way too light feathered a word for what it is. People who've invested their time and effort to get this far and be 1 point away. That's an issue that all of you unanimously supported in December. We need to move away from that being the practice. So it's 50,000 people since 2018-19 have taken and passed a performance assessment and gotten credentialed. So that's significant. A much smaller number have been caught in this particular web, but we want all of them. If they're ready to teach and their program can support, they were close but not quite there. This is the very discussion we had in December. If they're close but not quite there, the program has the on the ground insight about how ready they are. They have every course assignment this person has completed, every observation that has been, submitted as part of their program. They ought to be able to make this determination and recommend to us. So I, for one, would love to see a flood of those recommendations coming into our certification division of candidates who are within the -1 SEM. And we need that reassurance out to that population of candidates just as quickly as we can possibly get it out there. And we need the technical assistance with preparation programs to help them understand. I have heard from some programs the question, do we have to do this? And I'm looking back at our standards to try to answer that question because I suspect they do have to do this. I think our standards and expectations and the statute that you've just cited, 44320.2, suggest that they do have to go the extra mile to recommend a candidate for a credential. So let's get ourselves all back in the room on this and make sure we are actually moving the pipeline of ready people into schools who can then also pick up their induction program. And thank you for the reminder, CTA colleagues, about the strength and structure of induction to pick people up when they first get into practice and help them get the rest of the way. These are very important tools we have. And I, for one, would love the opportunity to strengthen and sharpen those tools and get out there into preparation to bring them along and to help get the smaller number of candidates who need that extra support and that extra analysis to support their readiness into the field. So we appreciate the discussion and we appreciate your support to continue working with the author and the sponsor, and we will do so and we'll carry your thoughts forward.
Commissioner Brown? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we need to I know we tell candidates a lot of things, and I know there's a lot of information on the dashboard for them to know, but I still think there are teacher candidates that, just think as CTC as this big entity that, that it's just overwhelming still trying to navigate their way through things. So I just think, and I just want to reiterate the importance of really stressing to candidates, here are your options should you feel like, someone's trying to make you take the test again, you don't have to. Or if in that case you did, then what are your options as a student? I mean, I think they see themselves going up against two entities, one, their institution of higher ed, and that, that could be scary, but also just CTC. So make it easy for them to understand what they can do.
I really appreciate this very thoughtful conversation, and I want to speak for my IHE colleagues who just don't happen to be in the room right now, not all of them. I know our faculty stand ready to recapture these folks who have not yet passed the TPA, so I want to commit on our collective behalf to continue to work with the commission to make this so.
Commissioner Brown.
I have a question about something else. So I didn't want it. Everybody finish with this one? I wanted to look at a different one. Okay. All right. SB 995. Mr. Howard, if you would help me understand that a little better, where it is and what it means and how far it's been going, and then what happens if and when it gets passed. It's the one by Padilla about the CSU's high quality teacher recruitment and retention that would work with some community colleges.
So you want to know where it is right now?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's on the suspense calendar. So appropriations committees have a regular calendar or their regular agenda items. And then any bill that is over a certain threshold in costs of identified costs, it goes to a suspense calendar. And that will be, it's a huge agenda item day where they just read dozens, hundreds of bills, and they say whether they get out of appropriations or they don't. And all this is part of the budget negotiations that all happen behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sitting there. It'll be heard probably as close to that May 17th deadline that I mentioned to you as they can get it. Certainly after the May revise comes out, because then there will be a better indication of how much money the legislature has, and there'll be better ideas of negotiations between the legislature and the governor's office on what's available for budget items. And so
where they prioritize that would say how important they think it is or not.
And
Okay.
and authors of bills get to prioritize, again, behind closed doors, authors of bills get to prioritize which of their bills that are sitting in that suspense calendar, which bills that they care most about and which ones they don't.
Mhm. So just for the information of all of us here, notice that this would allow a student to complete a bachelor degree and a credential in 4 years, making it more affordable and more accessible. Unless
The bill
it's
as
not
a
important
the bill as originally written would have required.
with a,
The bill as originally written would have required it to be completed in 4 years.
Mhm.
The original idea was to set up a pilot program, have it do just a 4-year straight
Mhm.
bachelor's and credential in 4 years. It took amendments in the first policy committee, Senate Ed, to say May, but the intent of the author's office is to create a pilot study that shows the success of doing it in 4 years.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. This was an information item and no action is necessary. So again, thank you, Mr. Howard. Having no additional items today, I adjourn the legislative committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair Klatt. I'd like us now to move to item 2H, new business, and the bi-monthly agenda is presented for information. We now have audience presentations. Please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raised hand icon of participating through Zoom or pressing *9. Recording Secretary, are there any audience presentations?
We do not have any audience presentations.
No. Thank you. We will next move to item 2I, interview and recommendations of the public member position for the Committee of Credentials. And I have that. The ad hoc committee recommends to the full commission the appointment of Mr. Brian Astrachan to serve in the public member position on the Committee of Credentials. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments on the site.
No? Okay. Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Members of the ad hoc committee were Commissioner Litt and Commissioner Danette Brown and myself. Would members of the committee like to speak about our recommendation? Yes, Commissioner Litt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had the opportunity to interview the candidate for the position. And to be concise, I found the candidate an engaged member of the community, reasonable, thoughtful, interested in serving, reasonably well-informed, and open to some additional training that would probably support him in that role. And also, we know that we're in need of additional participation on this committee, not only for this member, but we could use more.
Exactly what Commissioner Litt just said. Ditto.
I support those comments as well. Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to approve the recommendation of the ad hoc committee? Yes, Commissioner Brown.
So moved.
And do I have a second? I believe anybody. No, it has to be us. Okay, Commissioner Litt. Any further discussion? Will the recording secretary please call for the vote?
Lynette Brown,
Aye.
Jose Cardenas,
Abstain.
Cheryl Cotton, Juan Cruz,
Aye.
Christopher Davis,
Abstain.
Michael De La Torre, Makita Gwino Shire,
Aye.
Megan Gross,
Aye.
Johanna Howick,
Aye.
Susan Aradia, Bonnie Clyde,
Aye.
Ira Lett,
Aye.
Monica Martinez, David Simmons,
Aye.
Pong Yuzoff. Motion carries.
Thank you. As you know, we were able to complete all agenda items for the closed session yesterday. So now we're going to go to the report of closed session items. Vice Chair Klatt?
Yes, the commission granted the following petitions for reinstatement. Jamie Curry, Bismarck Geronimo, Anna Van Loon, Allegra Fromby. The commission denied the following petitions for reinstatement. Alex Bashoff, Matthew Smith. The commission rejected the proposed decision in the following matters and called for the transcript. Adam Alexander, Aaron Cow, Vanessa Castaneda-Wynn, Tiffany Estrada. Commissioner Michael De La Torre recused himself on this item. April Smith, Commissioner Jose Cardenas recused himself on this item. The commission reviewed the transcript in the following matters, and a decision and order will be prepared for the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. Ruth Gray, Brandy Grivois, Don Pellerin, Danique Tarrin, Commissioner Michael De La Torre recused himself on this item, and Michael Scott Turner Jr. The commission tabled its review of the transcript in the matter of Blanca Quintana until the full transcript is received. The commission vacated the default decision and order and granted an administrative hearing in the matter of Luke Stevers. The commission discussed the following consent calendar items and remanded the matters back to the Committee of Credentials. Number 34, Lucas Hicks. Number 45, Laura Licata. Number 53, Matthew Morrison. And number 54, Heather Moyer.
Thank you, Vice Chair Klatt. Colleagues, thank you for your thoughtful and engaged work over the last couple of days. I always appreciate being with you. I now adjourn the April 2024 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Our next meeting is on June 20th and 21st, 2024.